Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Cabbage Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Pokémon Summoning Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Hashtag Chapter 1, Invisible Friend. The concrete path scraped against Izuku's worn sneakers, each step echoing the doctor's final, crushing words, functionally quirkless. A normal, happy life. Normal, happy. The words felt like pebbles in his stomach, heavy and cold. He kicked a loose chunk of asphalt, sending it skittering into the weeds, choking the edge of the path leading down to the Mizudafu riverbank. Below, the water churned, sluggish and gray under the late afternoon sun that did nothing to warm the chill sitting deep in his bones. He was 8 years old, and the world had just shrunk, collapsing inwards until the only thing left was the hollow feeling where his hero's heart used to beat. He wasn't supposed to be here alone. Mom would worry. But the apartment felt too small, the walls pressing in with her silent, tearful sympathy and the unspoken weight of shattered dreams. Out here, with the rustle of dry reeds and the distant hum of city traffic, he could pretend to breathe. He scrambled down the steep, muddy slope, uncaring of the dirt smearing his trousers, and settled heavily on a large, flat rock jutting out over the water. The surface was cool and gritty beneath his palms. He pulled his knees up to his chest, burying his face in the fabric. The tears he'd held back in the sterile doctor's office, under Mom's trembling hand, finally escaped, hot and silent, soaking into his jeans. But the question hammered against his ribs, sharp and useless. Why no Quirk? Why was he broken? Bakugu's sneering face flashed in his mind. Deku. Useless. Now it wasn't just an insult, it was a diagnosis. A flicker of light caught the edge of his blurred vision. He blinked, scrubbing roughly at his eyes with his sleeve. Probably just a trick of the tears and the low sun glinting off the water. He sniffled, the sound loud in the quiet riverside air. Another flicker, brighter this time, emanating from just beneath the murky surface a few feet from the rock. Golden orange, like trapped sunset. It pulsed gently, rhythmically. Izuku leaned forward, curiosity momentarily overriding despair. A discarded plastic bottle? Some strange algae? The light pulsed again, stronger, and then it surfaced. Izuku froze. It was a fish. But unlike any fish he'd ever seen, even in his most dog-eared books about deep-sea creatures. It was large, easily the length of his arm, covered in overlapping, ridged scales that shone with an impossible internal radiance, brilliant orange fading to a creamy yellow underbelly. Its eyes were wide, black, and startlingly intelligent, fixed directly on him. A stiff, fan-like fin rose from its back, and two long, whisker-like barbels trailed from its upper lip. It floated placidly, partially submerged, the water around it shimmering with its borrowed light. A Magikarp. The name surfaced in his mind instantly, unbidden, perfect. He'd doodled creatures like this in the margins of his notebooks for years, creatures that felt more real to him sometimes than the quirks flashing across the TV news. Hello. Izuku whispered, the word cracking. He stretched out a hesitant hand towards the glowing fish. The Magikarp didn't dart away. It tilted its head, those deep black eyes observing him. Then, with a soft splash, it nudged forward. Not towards his hand, but towards the rock itself. Using powerful flicks of its large orange tail fin, it heaved its heavy body clumsily out of the water and onto the damp stone right beside Izuku's leg. Water streamed off its luminous scales, but the glow remained undimmed. It was cool to the touch, radiating a gentle chill like river stones in the shade. Izuku held his breath. The fish wriggled, its movements ungainly on land, and then it pressed its smooth, cool flank firmly against his shin. A soft, almost inaudible humming vibration thrummed through the contact. It wasn't just leaning, it was cuddling, seeking warmth, or comfort, or connection. A choked gasp escaped Izuku. He stared, wide-eyed, at the impossible creature nestled against him. Wonder bloomed, fierce and bright, momentarily eclipsing the crushing despair. He'd seen it. He'd touched it. It was real. Are you real? He breathed, his fingers trembling as they hovered just above the radiant scales. He didn't dare touch it again, afraid it might vanish like a soap bubble. The Magikarp just hummed its soft vibration against his leg, its large eye blinking slowly. The warmth of its glow, the solid, cool weight of it, the undeniable reality of its presence, it flooded Izuku with a dizzying mix of relief and terror. Relief because it was real. Terror because, what if it wasn't? What if this was the first sign that the doctor's unspoken implication was true? That the loneliness of being quirkless had finally cracked something inside his head? He looked around frantically. The riverbank was deserted. An old man walked his dog further upstream, gaze fixed ahead, utterly oblivious to the glowing fish sprawled on the rock. A couple strolled hand in hand along the path high above, laughing at something private. None of them glanced his way. None of them saw the impossible light. The terror surged, cold and sharp. No one else can see it. The thought was a punch to the gut, stealing his breath. The wonder curdled into a sickening dread. Was he crazy? Like Mom had worried about when he was little and talked to people who weren't there? People like Takada, the wet boy in the doctor's office, or the pale girl Ray who sometimes crawled out of the TV static. They were real to him, solid and undeniable, but invisible to everyone else. Ghosts, he'd eventually figured out. Was this another ghost? A fish ghost? Or something worse? A hallucination born from wanting a quirk, any quirk, so desperately? The Magikarp nudged his leg again, the vibration intensifying slightly, a gentle insistence. It felt too solid, too detailed, too alive to be a figment. The coolness of its scales against his skin was undeniable. He slowly, cautiously, lowered his hand and rested his fingertips on its smooth back. The hum deepened, resonating up his arm. It felt comforting. Like a purr. Like it was trying to tell him it was okay. Tears welled up again, but this time they were different. Not the hot tears of despair, but a confusing mix of fear, overwhelming loneliness, and a fragile, desperate gratitude. He wasn't completely alone on this rock. Something saw him. Something inexplicable and glowing had crawled out of the river just to press against him. He stayed there until the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, the river turning into a ribbon of molten lead. The Magikarp eventually wriggled back into the water with a soft splash, its glow fading as it sank into the murky depths. Izuku watched the ripples spread and vanish, the spot where it had been now dark and ordinary. He touched the damp patch on his trousers where it had rested. He walked home slowly, the hollow feeling in his chest replaced by a buzzing static of confusion and a fragile, terrifying hope. He didn't tell Mom about the fish. How could he? I sat by the river and a giant, glowing goldfish cuddled me, but only I could see it. He could already picture the worry deepening in her eyes, the hesitant questions about if he was feeling all right, maybe another visit to a different doctor. He couldn't bear it. Not yet. He needed to understand first. Understanding didn't come. Confirmation did. 3 days later, he was sitting on the worn rug in his bedroom, surrounded by scattered All Might action figures, trying and failing to muster the usual enthusiasm for reenacting the Silver Age showdown against Toxic Chainsaw. The figures felt like plastic lies in his hands. He sighed, letting the All Might figure drop onto the rug with a soft thud. Movement. Near the closet door. He snapped his head up. For a split second, he thought it was Ray, the pale girl ghost who sometimes visited. But no. This was different. Smaller. Solid, not translucent. And brown. It was a rabbit. Sort of. It stood upright on powerful hind legs, covered in soft, plush-looking brown fur. Enormous, floppy ears, tipped with cream-colored fluff, framed an expressive face with wide, curious pink eyes. A small, cream-colored puff of a tail bobbed slightly as it tilted its head, studying the fallen All Might figure with apparent interest. A Buniri. The name whispered through his mind as clearly as Magikarp had. Izuku froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. Not alone. He wasn't imagining it. The Magikarp hadn't been a fluke. This creature was here. In his room. He slowly, carefully, lowered himself from his knees to sit cross-legged, trying not to spook it. The Buniri's pink eyes flickered to him. It didn't vanish. It took a tentative hop forward, then another, its movements light and springy. It stopped a few feet away, nose twitching. Then, with surprising boldness, it hopped right up to the fallen All Might figure. It nudged the plastic hero with its nose, then looked back at Izuku, its ears flopping gently. A startled laugh bubbled up in Izuku's throat, half strangled by disbelief. He doesn't usually fall down that easy, he whispered, his voice raspy. The Buniri tilted its head again, then mimicked the action, deliberately bumping the figure with its nose again, sending it toppling onto its side. It looked back at Izuku, pink eyes seeming almost mischievous. Izuku's laugh escaped, louder this time, shaky but real. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling. The Buniri watched his approach but didn't retreat. His fingertips brushed the incredibly soft fur on its head, right between its ears. It was warm, solid, undeniably real. The creature closed its eyes, leaning slightly into the touch, a soft, almost inaudible cooing sound emanating from it. The wonder was back, brighter this time, but so was the icy thread of fear. He looked towards his closed bedroom door. Mom was in the kitchen, the faint clatter of dishes a familiar sound. She couldn't see this. She wouldn't hear the soft cooing. He was alone with this impossible, fluffy reality. Alone became a relative term. The world Izuku navigated, the crowded school corridors, the bustling grocery store, the quiet park, became populated by silent observers only he could perceive. A week after the Buniri, he was walking home from school, head down, trying to ignore the jeering calls of Quirkless Deku fading behind him. He took his usual shortcut through the small neighborhood park, a patch of struggling green amidst the concrete. High above, perched on the skeletal branch of a cherry tree stubbornly clinging to the last of its blossoms, sat a bird. Not a sparrow or a crow. This one was small and sleek, covered in soft brown and cream feathers, with a distinctive black marking like a mask across its eyes and a sharp, pointed beak. A Pidgey. It pet its head, observing him with bright, intelligent eyes as he passed beneath the tree. It didn't fly away. It just watched. A silent, feathered sentinel. Then came the fox. Or rather, the Vulpix. He saw it one evening, a week later, as he helped Mom take out the recycling. It was sitting primly on the low wall bordering their apartment building's tiny scrap of garden, illuminated by the yellow glow of the street lamp. Its fur was a stunning, fiery red-orange, fluffier than any fox he'd ever seen in pictures, and it possessed not one, but 6 luxurious, curling tails that fanned out behind it like a living sunset. Its eyes, a deep, intelligent amber, locked onto his the moment he stepped outside. It didn't startle. It just gazed at him, serene and otherworldly, before vanishing soundlessly into the shadows between the bins as Mom called him back inside. Each sighting was a jolt, a confirmation that he wasn't imagining the Magikarp, the Buniri. But also, each sighting drove the invisible wall between him and the rest of the world a little higher. He started looking for them constantly, his gaze darting to shadows, tree branches, reflections in puddles. He stopped mentioning the ghosts outright to Mom, but the new creatures, the temptation to share, to have someone else see the impossible beauty he saw, was overwhelming. He tried with Mom first. He found her folding laundry in the living room one Saturday morning, the TV murmuring some daytime talk show. "Mom," he started, twisting the hem of his t-shirt. Have you ever seen a fish that glows? Like really bright orange and gold? Or a rabbit with really big ears? Brown and fluffy?" Izuku Midoriya paused, a half-folded pair of Izuku's trousers in her hands. Her smile was gentle, but the worry was already creeping into her eyes, the same worry that had been there since the doctor's office. "A glowing fish, sweetie? That sounds like something from one of your cartoons. Or maybe a trick of the light on the river." She set the trousers down and moved towards him, smoothing his unruly hair. "And rabbits? Well, we don't have wild rabbits in the city, Izuku. Maybe you saw a cat? Or a big squirrel?" "It wasn't it." "Squirrel, Mum," Izuku insisted, his voice tight with frustration. "It had huge floppy ears and stood up like a person. And it was in my room. And the fish was real, I touched it. It was cold and smooth and it glowed. Inko's hand stilled on his head. The worry deepened, etching lines around her eyes. Your room? She asked softly. Izuku, oh honey. She knelt down to his level, taking his small hands in hers. They felt warm, real, grounding in a way that only made the invisible creatures feel more distant. You know it's okay to use your imagination. It's wonderful really. But maybe try to keep the pretend games to your drawings, HM? It's important to know what's real. Her thumb stroked his knuckles. You've been through a lot lately. It's okay to feel sad or confused. He wanted to scream. He wanted to drag the Buniri out from under his bed right that second. But he knew it wouldn't be there for her. It only appeared for him. He just stared at their joined hands, the frustration curdling into a sour lump in his throat. She didn't believe him. She thought he was playing pretend, or worse, that he was confused. Broken. He pulled his hands away gently. Pretend. The word tasted like ash. School was worse. Bakugo Katsuki, his former friend turned relentless tormentor, needed no encouragement. Izuku's mistake happened during recess. He was sitting under the big oak tree at the edge of the playground, ostensibly reading a hero analysis notebook, an old one, pre-diagnosis, but his attention was fixed on the Pidgey. It was back, hopping along a lower branch, peering down at the shrieking children with what looked like avian disdain. A small, fond smile touched Izuku's lips as it puffed out its chest feathers. He didn't see Bakugo approach until the shadow fell over him. What's so funny, Deku? Bakugo sneered, his hands already sparking faintly in his pockets. His lackeys, Tsubasa and the others, snickered behind him. Drawing pictures of heroes you'll never be? Izuku snapped his notebook shut, his heart lurching. And nothing, Kaken. Just watching the bird. He gestured weakly upwards. Bakugo glanced at the branch. What bird? There's no stupid bird, you liar. His red eyes narrowed. Or are you seeing things now too? First no Quirk, now you're going crazy. He barked a harsh laugh. Figures. Useless and delusional. It's right there. Izuku protested, pointing more insistently. The Pidgey, sensing the hostility, fluffed up further but didn't fly away. It fixed Bakugo with a beady stare. On the branch. The brown one with the black mask. Bakugo squinted, then scowled. There's nothing there, Deku. Are you stupid and blind? He took a threatening step forward. Stop making up stupid stories. It's pathetic. He shoved Izuku hard against the rough bark of the tree. Just shut up and stay out of my way, freak. The taunts followed him. Crazy Deku. Seeing things. Quirkless and nuts. As Bakugo and his cronies swaggered away. Izuku slid down the trunk, the bark scraping his back through his thin t-shirt. He looked up. The Pidgey was still there, tilting its head at him. It gave a soft, melodic chirp that no one else seemed to hear. The sound was unbearably lonely. He tried showing his favorite teacher, Mr. Kobayashi, a detailed drawing he'd made of the Vulpix during art class. He'd poured hours into it, capturing the vibrant red-orange fur, the intelligent amber eyes, the impossible elegance of the 6 curling tails. See, sensei? It has 6 tails. And the fur looks like fire. Mr. Kobayashi adjusted his glasses, peering at the drawing. That's very imaginative, Midoriya-kun, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Excellent use of color. Very creative. He handed the drawing back. But remember, we're focusing on observational drawing this term. Real things we can see around us. Try drawing the classroom plant next, HM? Keep the fantasy for your free time. His smile was kind but dismissive. The message was clear. Stop pretending. Focus on reality. Reality. The word became a cage. Reality was the doctor's pronouncement. Reality was Mom's worried eyes. Reality was Bakugo's sneers and the teacher's gentle admonishments. Reality was being quirkless, small, and alone. Except he wasn't alone. Not really. The Magikarp sometimes appeared in the small, grimy koi pond near the rundown playground equipment, glowing faintly beneath the murky water. The Buniri took to napping under his bed during the day, a warm, soft presence he could sometimes hear shifting in its sleep. The Pidgey became a constant, silent observer on his walks to and from school. The Vulpix appeared less often, but always in moments of quiet, a flash of fiery fur in the alleyway, a glimpse of six tails disappearing around a corner. They were real. They were his. They saw him when no one else truly did. One rainy afternoon, trapped inside by the downpour, Izuku sat at his small desk. Bakugu's taunts echoed in his head, "Crazy Deku." Mr. Kobayashi's gentle dismissal stung, "Keep the fantasy." Mom's worry was a palpable weight in the next room. He looked at the Buniri curled up on his all-might pillow, fast asleep, its huge ears twitching slightly. He looked at the drawing of the Vulpix pinned to his corkboard. He thought of the steadfast Pidgey on its branch, the patient Magikarp in the murky water. They weren't pretend. They weren't crazy. They were just a secret world overlapping the visible one. His world. He pulled out a fresh notebook, the cover blank and inviting. Not a hero analysis book. Something else. He opened it to the first page, the crisp paper smooth under his fingertips. He picked up his favorite pencil, the one with the slightly chewed eraser. At the top of the page, he wrote in careful, determined letters, "My friends." Then, below, he started to draw. Not the classroom plant. Not anything from the reality they insisted he confine himself to. He drew the Magikarp, capturing the luminous scales, the fan-like fin, the wise black eye. He drew the Buniri, its soft fluff, its floppy ears, its mischievous pink gaze. He drew the Pidgey, sleek and watchful. He drew the Vulpix, a whirl of fiery fur and six elegant tails. Under each drawing he wrote their names. Not just descriptions. Names. Given by him. Acknowledged by him. Magikarp. Buniri. Pidgey. Vulpix. He closed the notebook, holding it tightly against his chest. Outside, the rain drummed against the windowpane. In the quiet of his room, the Buniri let out a soft sigh in its suit. Izuku felt the familiar prickle of tears, but this time, they weren't tears of despair, or even frustration. They were tears of quiet, fierce defiance. They were real. He saw them. He named them. And he wouldn't let anyone, not Bakugu, not the teachers, not even the crushing weight of being quirkless, tell him otherwise. This was his bridge. This was his world. And he would walk it, even if he had to walk it alone. Except, he wasn't truly alone anymore. He had friends. Invisible, impossible friends. And for now, that was enough. ## Chapter 2, The Egg Breaks. The notebook became Izuku's fortress. Its pages, filled with careful sketches and the names Magikarp, Buniri, Pidgey, Vulpix, were proof against the whispers, "Crazy Deku," "Quirkless," "Delusional." He carried it everywhere, tucked securely inside his backpack or clutched tightly under his arm like a shield. It was tangible evidence of his invisible world, a world that felt more real, more alive, than the brittle reality of school corridors and pitying glances. Bakugu Katsuki, however, had a particular talent for breaching fortresses. Especially Izuku's. It happened after school, near the riverbank where the Magikarp had first appeared. Izuku had taken to sitting on his rock, notebook open on his lap, hoping for another glimpse of the luminous fish. He was sketching a new addition, a small, round creature he'd glimpsed that morning near the park pond. It looked like a living egg with stubby legs, covered in a hard, cream-colored shell patterned with red and blue triangles. It had large, innocent eyes and seemed perpetually cheerful, wobbling after stray bugs. Togepi his mind supplied, the name fitting perfectly. He was carefully shading the triangular patterns when the shadow fell over him. "Oh well, look who's hiding out here drawing his little imaginary friends." Izuku flinched, snapping the notebook shut instinctively. Too late. Bakugu stood on the path above, flanked by Tsubasa and another lackey, his usual sneer twisted into something uglier by the late afternoon sun glinting off the river. He descended the muddy slope with deliberate, crunching steps. "Give it back, Kaken." Izuku scrambled to his feet, clutching the notebook to his chest. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, suffocating silence of the riverside. The Pidgey, usually perched watchfully in a nearby tree, had vanished. Bakugo ignored him, snatching the notebook from Izuku's grasp with one explosive-powered lunge. "What's this garbage?" He flipped it open with rough, disdainful fingers, his red eyes scanning Izuku's careful drawings. Glowing fish? Six-tailed foxes? Freakish egg bunnies? He barked a harsh laugh, the sound echoing unnaturally loud. "You really are cracked, aren't you, Deku? Drawing this crap instead of facing the fact you're nothing." "It's not crap," Izuku protested, his voice trembling but fierce. He lunged forward, trying to grab it back. "They're real. Give it back." Bakugo easily shoved him back, sending him stumbling onto the muddy ground. "Real?" he spat, holding the notebook aloft. "Show me one then, Dad. Show me this stupid fish or your dumb bunny. Oh wait, you can't, because they're not real. Just like you'll never be a real hero." Spittle flew from his lips. The raw, unfiltered contempt in his voice was a physical blow. Izuku pushed himself up, mud smearing his cheek and hands. Desperation clawed at his throat. "They are real. You just can't see them. Like you couldn't see the Pidgey." "The what?" Bakuga's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Still on about that? You really are pathetic." He looked down at the notebook in his hand, at the detailed drawing of the cheerful Togepi. A cruel smirk twisted his lips. "Fine. Since you love your little imaginary freaks so much, let's see how real this one is." He didn't throw the notebook. Not yet. His gaze swept the riverbank, searching for a target for his fury. And then his eyes locked onto something near the water's edge, partially hidden by reeds. Izuku followed his gaze, and his blood ran cold. There was the Togepi. Its large, dark eyes were wide, fixed curiously on Bakugo. It wobbled slightly on its stubby legs, utterly oblivious to the danger radiating from the explosive boy. "No!" Izuku screamed, the word tearing from his raw throat. "Kaken, don't." But Bakugo was already moving. His sneer deepened into something feral. "There's nothing there, Deku. Just empty air. But if it makes you feel better." He drew his foot back, sparks crackling faintly around his sneaker. "I'll kick your imaginary friend anyway." He lunged forward, not towards Izuku, but towards the spot where the Togepi wobbled innocently. A vicious, powerful kick aimed directly at the small, round creature. Izuku saw it happen in horrifying slow motion. Bakugo's foot, trailing faint smoke, connecting solidly with the Togepi's cream-colored shell. Not passing through. Not encountering empty air. Thunk. The sound was sickeningly real. A sharp, brittle impact. The Togepi didn't vanish. It didn't phase through. It was there. Solid. Visible. And it was sent flying. A tiny, high-pitched cry, a sound like a shattered chime, pierced the air as the small creature arced through the late afternoon sunlight. It tumbled end over end, a blur of cream and red and blue, before crashing down onto the muddy ground several feet away, landing on its side with a soft, awful thud. It didn't move. Bakugo froze. His sneer vanished, replaced by utter, dumbfounded shock. He stared at his foot, then at the spot where the Togepi had been, then at the small, motionless form lying in the mud. His lackeys gasped, their eyes wide with disbelief. "Be Bakugo? What was that?" Tsubasa stammered, pointing a shaking finger. Did you kick something?" Bakugo didn't answer. He was staring at Izuku, his red eyes wide with a confusion that rapidly morphed back into rage. "You," he snarled, whirling on Izuku. "What kind of trick is this, Deku? Some stupid quirk? Some stupid toy?" He looked back at the notebook in his hand, his face contorting. "You think this is funny?" The shock that had momentarily paralyzed Izuku shattered. A raw, animal sound ripped from his throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated anguish and fury. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He lunged, not at Bakugo, but past him, scrambling through the mud on hands and knees towards the small, crumpled form. "Togepi!" he cried, the name a desperate sob. He reached the creature, his hands trembling violently as he hovered over it, afraid to touch. It lay perfectly still, one large eye half open, staring sightlessly at the gray sky. Its shell, where Bakugu's foot had connected, showed a spiderweb of fine cracks radiating from a central point. Looked broken, empty. The world narrowed to that small, broken form in the mud. The jeers of Bakugu's lackeys, Bakugu's own furious sputtering, "It's a fake. It has to be," the cold mud seeping through his trousers, it all faded into a distant, meaningless buzz. A wave of grief, profound and crushing, washed over Izuku, colder than the river water. He'd named it. He'd sketched its cheerful wobble. And now, because of him, because he'd drawn attention to his secret world, it was gone. Broken by Bakugu's blind rage. Tears blurred his vision, hot and stinging. He couldn't breathe. The hollow ache that had lived in his chest since the doctor's office yawned wide open, threatening to swallow him whole. He reached out, his muddy fingers trembling, not daring to touch the cracked shell, but needing to say sorry. To acknowledge this small, impossible life that had been snuffed out because it had trusted his world. His fingertip brushed the cool, cracked surface near the Togepi's unmoving head. As soon as he made contact, the world shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. A deep, resonant vibration that started in his fingertips and surged up his arm, flooding his chest, humming in his bones. It wasn't painful. It was overwhelming, immense, like standing too close to a colossal bell being struck. The air around the Togepi seemed to warp, shimmering with intense golden light that pulsed from the point of contact. The light wasn't warm. It felt ancient, powerful, humming with a potential that vibrated Izuku's teeth. He gasped, trying to pull his hand back, but his fingers seemed fused to the shell by the surging energy. The cracked form of the Togepi dissolved before his eyes. Not shattered, not crumbling, dissolving into pure, radiant light. The light coalesced, swirling like liquid gold, condensing down into a single point, a small, intensely glowing orb, no larger than a marble, hovering just above the mud where the Togepi had lain. The golden light pulsed once, blindingly bright, then winked out completely. The humming vibration ceased, leaving a profound silence ringing in Izuku's ears. He was left kneeling in the mud, staring dumbfounded at the spot where the Togepi had been. Where the orb had been. Now, there was only damp earth and crushed reeds. No shell. No body. Not even a trace of the golden light. Only a faint, lingering warmth in his fingertips and a deep, echoing emptiness inside him where the surge of power had been. What the hell was that? Bakuga's voice was uncharacteristically shaky, stripped of its usual bluster. He was staring at the empty spot, his face pale beneath its usual ruddy hue. His lackeys were frozen, mouths agape. Izuku couldn't answer. He couldn't even look at them. He stared at his own trembling hand, the mud caked under his nails, the spot where the impossible light had bloomed and vanished. Grief warred with a terrifying, electrifying confusion. Where had the Togepi gone? What was that light? What had happened? Bakugu recovered faster. The shock morphed back into fury, directed entirely at Izuku. "You!" he roared, brandishing the notebook. "What kind of stupid light show was that? Some kind of hologram quirk? You think you can trick me, Deku?" His hands sparked violently. "You think you can make me look stupid?" He didn't wait for an answer. With a snarl of pure rage, he slammed his hands together. A small, controlled explosion erupted between his palms, engulfing Izuku's precious notebook. The cover blackened and curled instantly. Pages ignited, flaring bright orange before crumbling into brittle, charred fragments that rained down onto the muddy ground like grotesque, ashy snowflakes. Years of careful observations, sketches, names, proof of his invisible friends, consumed in seconds. The acrid smell of burning paper filled the air. Bakuga dropped the smoldering remains contemptuously onto the mud near Izuku's knees. "Now you don't have to pretend anymore." He spat on the ground near Izuku's hand. "Stay away from me, freak. And keep your stupid imaginary crap to yourself." He turned and stalked back up the path, his lackeys scrambling after him, casting nervous glances back at Izuku still kneeling motionless in the mud. The silence returned, deeper now, broken only by the sluggish flow of the river and the faint crackle of the last embers dying in the charred remnants of his fortress. Izuku didn't move. He stared at the ashes of his notebook, mingling with the mud. He stared at the spot where the Togepi had lain, then vanished in that burst of impossible light. The cold seeped through his trousers, but it was nothing compared to the icy numbness spreading through his core. He'd lost everything. His proof. His friends. One of them gone. Destroyed. Vanished into light. He slowly, mechanically, reached out and picked up a single, half-burned page. It was the drawing of the Vulpix. The elegant lines of its 6 tails were charred black at the edges. He traced the singed paper with a muddy finger. They were real. Bakugo had kicked the Togepi. He'd felt the impact. He'd seen it fly. He'd seen the cracks. And then the light. The orb. What did it mean? The numbness began to recede, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a throbbing ache behind his eyes. He carefully folded the burnt Vulpix page and tucked it into his pocket. Then, moving like an automaton, he pushed himself to his feet, his legs stiff and cold. He didn't look back at the riverbank. He just started walking, leaving the ashes and the muddy imprint of his knees behind, trudging towards home under a sky that had turned the bruised purple of a fading bruise. The walk home was a blur of gray streets and echoing silence. The familiar sights, the corner store, the laundromat, the park gate, passed by unnoticed. His mind was a whirlpool, skiing down fragments of the afternoon. The thwack of impact, the tiny cry, the blinding golden light, the hum in his bones, the smell of burning paper. He felt hollowed out, scraped raw. He wanted his mom. He wanted to bury his face in her sweater and cry until the world made sense again. But he also dreaded it. How could he explain? Kakin kicked my invisible egg friend and it vanished into light, and then he burned my notebook. She'd think he'd finally cracked. He slipped into the apartment building, the fluorescent hallway lights buzzing like angry insects. He took the stairs slowly, each step an effort. The comforting smell of home, miso soup and laundry detergent hit him as he opened the door, a familiar warmth that felt jarringly out of place. "Inko? Is that you?" Mom's voice called from the kitchen. "Yeah, Mom," he managed, his voice rough. He toed off his muddy shoes, avoiding looking at his reflection in the hallway mirror. He knew what he'd see: pale face, red-rimmed eyes, mud streaked on his cheek and clothes. A mess. "Oh, Izuku." Inko appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her welcoming smile faltered instantly as she took him in. "Sweetheart, what happened? Are you hurt?" She rushed forward, her hands fluttering over him, brushing mud from his cheek, her eyes wide with alarm. "You're filthy. And you look... Oh, honey." Her expression softened into deep concern. "Did you fall? Did Katsuki?" Izuku shook his head, unable to meet her eyes. The lump in his throat was too big. I'm okay, Mom. Tripped by the river. It's muddy." The lie tasted bitter. He focused on taking off his jacket, hanging it crookedly on the hook. Inko wasn't fooled. She gently steered him towards the bathroom. All right. Let's get you cleaned up. Go take a warm shower, sweetie. I'll finish dinner." She gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze, but her eyes lingered on his face, filled with that familiar, heartbreaking worry. "You seem very upset. Are you sure nothing else happened?" He just shook his head again, mutely, and escaped into the bathroom, locking the door behind him. He leaned his forehead against the cool wood, squeezing his eyes shut. The image of the Togepi flying through the air flashed behind his eyelids. The golden light. The ashes. He showered mechanically, the hot water stinging his scraped knees but doing nothing to warm the cold knot of grief and confusion inside. He dressed in clean pajamas, the soft fabric feeling alien against his skin. When he emerged, dinner was on the low table in the living room, steaming bowls of rice and miso soup, simple and comforting. Mom sat waiting, her own bowl untouched, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes watchful. "Feeling better?" she asked softly as he sat down. "A little," he mumbled, picking up his chopsticks. He stirred his soup, watching the wakame swirl. He couldn't bring himself to eat. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. He could feel her gaze on him, patient, waiting. He focused on the steam rising from his bowl, trying to find the words, any words, that weren't a lie or a descent into madness. "Mom," he started, his voice barely a whisper. He stared into the murky broth. What if something wasn't invisible to everyone? Just to most people? But then, for a second, someone else could see it. He dared a glance up. Inko's brow furrowed slightly. She set her own chopsticks down. "Izuku, honey, are we talking about your friends again?" Her voice was gentle, but the undercurrent of concern was unmistakable. "You know, sometimes our minds play tricks, especially when we're feeling sad or stressed." "No." The word burst out louder than he intended. He flinched, seeing the worry deepen in her eyes. He took a shaky breath, forcing his voice lower. "No, it's not that. But theoretically, what if?" Inko sighed softly, reaching across the table to pat his hand. "Well, I suppose if something was real, truly real, then it wouldn't be invisible to everyone all the time, would it? Maybe under the right circumstances, or to the right person." She trailed off, clearly trying to humor him while steering him back to reality. "But Izuku, it's important not to confuse wishing something was real with it actually being." She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes, focused on Izuku's face a moment before, snapped to a point just over his shoulder, near the living room window. Her hand, resting on his, went rigid. Her breath hitched, a tiny, sharp inhalation. Izuku froze. He slowly turned his head, following her gaze. Floating serenely in the middle of their small living room, bathed in the warm light of the table lamp, was Togepi. But not the small, round creature he knew. This one was slightly taller, more humanoid. Its cream-colored body was sleeker, its stubby legs replaced by slender, dangling ones. The hard shell was gone. Instead, it had a smooth, egg-shaped body, still patterned with the red and blue triangles, but now complemented by small, graceful wings fluttering gently at its back. Large, intelligent eyes, the same dark, innocent pools, gazed calmly around the room. A soft, warm light seemed to emanate faintly from it, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Togetic. Izuku's heart stopped. He stared, utterly dumbfounded. It was here. In his living room. Transformed. Visible. But the shock was nothing compared to the look on his mother's face. Her eyes were wide, impossibly wide, her mouth slightly open. The color had drained from her cheeks, leaving her pale. She wasn't looking at Izuku. She was staring, transfixed, at the floating Togetic. Her hand trembled slightly where it rested on his. "Mom," Izuku whispered, his voice cracking. Inko didn't seem to hear him. Her gaze remained locked on the Togetic. She breathed, the sound barely audible. "Izuku. What is that?" The world tilted. The air rushed out of Izuku's lungs. He looked from his mother's awestruck, terrified face to the Togetic, which tilted its head curiously, letting out a soft, melodic chime that seemed to vibrate in the still air. She saw it. His mother saw it. The implications crashed over him like a tidal wave, washing away the grief, the confusion, the numbness, leaving behind a raw, electrifying revelation. The orb, the light, the capture. The Togepi hadn't been destroyed. It had been transformed, contained, and now released, visible, real to someone else. His quirk. The doctor's words echoed, invisible quirks, activated under an extremely specific set of circumstances. The circumstance, the contact, the surge of grief and protective fury, the touch, caught. The word resonated deep within him, a fundamental truth clicking into place with the force of a seismic shift. It wasn't about seeing them. It was about catching them, making them his. And when he did, they became real, solid, visible, usable. He looked back at the Togetic, floating peacefully in his living room, its wings beating a soft rhythm. He looked at his mother, still frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder he'd never seen directed at his world before. He didn't know how. He didn't know why. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that everything had just changed. It's... Izuku swallowed hard, finding his voice. It trembled, but it was clear. It's Togetic, Mom. He met her stunned gaze. It's my friend. ## Chapter 3, Toy Dreams, Real Battles. The polished granite floors of UA High's main entrance hall felt like ice beneath Izuku's worn sneakers. He clutched his examinee ticket, number 2237, so tightly the edges bit into his palm. Around him, hundreds of hopefuls buzzed with nervous energy and flickers of visible quirks, sparks dancing from fingertips, skin hardening to stone, limbs stretching impossibly. The air crackled with ambition and raw power, thick enough to choke on. Izuku felt microscopic. Insignificant. A pebble tossed onto a beach of giants. Caught Pokémon become visible and usable in battle. The words, his own desperate deduction after the Togepi revelation, echoed in his head like a fragile mantra. They were the only shield he had against the crushing weight of the UA entrance exam, against the ghost of Bakugu's sneer, freak, cheater, against the lingering fear that maybe, just maybe, he was crazy and the Togetic's appearance was a collective hallucination shared only by him and his terrified mother. Inko had seen it. That was undeniable. The look of pure, unadulterated shock on her face, the trembling hand pointing at the floating Togetic, it was etched into his memory. She hadn't dismissed it. She hadn't called a doctor, yet. She just stared, asked hesitant, bewildered questions. And Togetic, sensing the tension, had vanished back into its pokeball form, a small, smooth, cream-colored sphere with red and blue triangles that had appeared in Izuku's pocket moments after the transformation. He'd felt its presence, a faint warmth against his leg, a constant, terrifying reminder of the power he barely understood. He hadn't dared summon it since. What if it only worked once? What if it scared Mom more? What if Bakugu found out? Now, standing in the heart of UA, the theory felt flimsy, a paper boat tossed into a hurricane. He had no notebook anymore, just a hastily scribbled list of the Pokémon he knew: Magikarp, useless on land; Buniri, fast, agile; Pidgey, small, flying; Vulpix, fire; Togetic, flying, psychic-ish. And that was it. No strategy. No practice. Just desperate hope and the memory of a sickening thought and blinding golden light. Nervous. Izuku jumped a foot in the air, whirling around. A girl with bright pink skin and horns beamed at him. Sorry. Didn't mean to startle ya. Just, everyone looks kinda tense. I'm vibrating. Literally. She held out a hand, which blurred slightly. Ashido Mina. What's your quirk? Izuku's mouth went dry. He fumbled, his gaze darting past her. Near the ceiling, perched on a light fixture utterly ignored by the throng, a small, sleek brown bird with a black mask-like marking watched the crowd with bright, intelligent eyes. A Pidgey. His Pidgey. It gave a soft chirp only he could hear. The familiar sight, a constant silent sentinel since his diagnosis, offered a sliver of grounding. It's complicated, he managed weakly. Ashido tilted her head, her smile unwavering. Ooh, mysterious. Cool. Good luck. She bounced off towards a group of loud boys, leaving Izuku feeling even more exposed. He scanned the crowd, searching for a flash of fiery orange fur, a glimpse of fluffy brown ears. Nothing. Were they here? Could they even be here, inside UA? He took a deep, shuddering breath. Focus. Just get through the explanation. Then you'll see. The written exam was a blur of complex logic puzzles and hero ethics scenarios. Izuku pored over them, his analytical mind clicking into gear despite the anxiety gnawing at his insides. He filled pages with notes, theories on rescue protocols, villain psychology, the same kind of analysis he used to apply to heroes, now channeled into proving he belonged here, quirk or not. Or rather, with his quirk, whatever it truly was. Finally, they were herded into a massive auditorium. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight hit the stage. Izuku's breath caught. Standing there, radiating effortless confidence, was the voice hero, Present Mike. He, listeners. Can I get a hey? Mick's amplified voice boomed, shaking the very seats. A scattered, nervous response rippled through the auditorium. Mike grinned. Welcome to today's live performance. Everybody say, the UA entrance exam. Plus Ultra. He launched into the practical exam briefing. 3 types of faux villains, 1-pointers, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers. Battle centers. Destroy robots for points. Rescue points awarded separately by judges. And the strict prohibition against attacking other examinees. That's all from me. I'll sign off with our school motto. Go beyond. Plus, Mike struck a dramatic pose. Ulte. A confident voice boomed from the front row. A tall boy with glasses and stiff posture chopped his hand through the air. Sorry, but the examination is beginning. We should all proceed to our designated battle centers post-haste. A ripple of annoyance went through the crowd. Izuku just shrunk in his seat. The boy's intensity was almost as intimidating as the robot's. Battle Center B. Izuku stood at the edge of a sprawling urban simulation zone, concrete canyons stretching before him. Hundreds of examinees jostled for position near the massive gate. He spotted the stiff boy, Ida Tenya, his mind supplied from the briefing sheet, revving his engine-like legs, Ashido stretching her pink limbs, a girl with gravity-defying brown hair bouncing nervously on her toes, and Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo stood slightly apart, a simmering storm of arrogance. His crimson eyes scanned the crowd dismissively, then locked onto Izuku. A slow, predatory smirk spread across his face. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The message was clear. You don't belong here, Deku. Izuku's stomach clenched. He looked away, focusing on the gate. Please, he thought, his knuckles white. Please be here. Please work. He scanned the fake cityscape. Nothing. No sign of Magikarp, Buniri, Vulpix, or Pidgey. Only Tagetic's faint warmth in his pocket offered any reassurance, and he was terrified to use it. What if it failed? It looked ridiculous? Start. Present Mick's voice exploded from speakers overhead. The massive gate groaned open. Like a dam bursting, the crowd surged forward. Explosions roared as Bakugo rocketed ahead. Ida blurred past on piston legs. Ashido slid on acid. Izuku was swept along in the tide, stumbling, instantly left behind. Panic seized him. He was going to fail. He was going to get 0 points. He'd be laughed out of UA before he even saw a robot. Fwack, crunch. A 1-point robot, a bulky, tank-like machine with a single red sensor eye, rounded a corner just ahead, crushing a parked car under its treads. It swiveled its arm-mounted cannon towards a cluster of slower examinees. Izuku froze. They were going to get hit. A flash of brown and cream shot past his peripheral vision. High above, clinging to a fire escape railing, the Pidgey chirped urgently. Its gaze wasn't on Izuku, but on the robot's sensor eye. And then Izuku saw it. Perched on the roof of the building the robot was emerging from, preening its fiery orange feathers. A bird larger than Pidgey, with a sharp, hooked beak and distinct black and red plumage on its head and wings. Fletchinder. The name slammed into his consciousness with perfect clarity. It was new. It hadn't been on his list. It tilted its head, watching the robot with predatory interest. Catch it. The thought wasn't his own. It was instinct, primal and urgent, overriding his fear. He needed help. He didn't think. He pushed through the stragglers, ignoring their yells, and sprinted towards the building. The Fletchinder watched him approach, its eyes sharp, intelligent. He scrambled up a dumpster, leapt, and grabbed the bottom rung of the fire escape ladder. Metal bit into his palms as he hauled himself up, ignoring the burn in his muscles. The Pidgey fluttered nervously nearby. The Fletchinder pet its head as Izuku reached the roof level, panting. It didn't fly away. It watched him, curious. Please, Izuku gasped, holding out a trembling hand, not to touch the bird, but towards the threat. That robot, it's going to hurt people? The Fletchinder's gaze flickered from Izuku to the 1-point robot below, which was now taking aim at a boy frozen in fear. Its eyes narrowed. A low, raspy caw escaped its beak. It spread its wings, fiery feathers catching the sunlight. This was it. The moment. The surge of protective fury he'd felt for the Togepi roared back, amplified by the imminent danger below. He focused it, channeled it through his outstretched hand towards the Fletchinder, a silent plea, "Help me save them." He didn't physically touch it, but the connection snapped into place. A familiar, deep, resonant vibration hummed in his bones, less intense than with Togepi, but unmistakable. Golden light, faint and swift as a camera flash, enveloped the Fletchinder for a split second. A small, warm sphere, patterned with stylized flames, appeared in Izuku's outstretched palm, the Pokeball. He didn't hesitate. He pointed towards the one-point robot below. "Fletchinder, go. Aim for its eye." He threw the warm sphere. It arced through the air, snapped open mid-flight, and released a burst of crimson light. The Fletchinder materialized, wings beating powerfully, visible to everyone. Gasps erupted from examinees below who saw the sudden apparition. "What the? A bird? Did that kid just summon that?" The Fletchinder shrieked, a piercing battle cry that echoed off the concrete walls. It tucked its wings and dove. Not just a dive. An ember dive. Flames licked around its beak and talons as it became a blazing comet esternies towards the robot's sensor eye. Whooshcrack. The fiery impact was spectacular. Molten metal sprayed. The sensor eye shattered. The one-pointer staggered, smoke pouring from its head, its cannon arms sparking wildly before going limp. It crashed onto its side with a ground-shaking thud. Silence. Utter, stunned silence fell over the immediate area. Dozens of examinees stared, open-mouthed, at the smoldering wreck of the robot and the large, fiery bird now perched triumphantly on its chassis, preening a wing. Then, they looked up at Izuku, still clinging to the fire escape. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. It worked. It worked. They saw it. Fletchinder was visible. He'd commanded it. He'd caught it. A robotic voice announced, "1-point villain destroyed. Points awarded to examinee 2237. A ragged cheer went up from the examinees he'd saved. The boy who'd been frozen gave him a shaky thumbs up. Izuku felt dizzy with relief and exhilaration. He scrambled down the fire escape, landing shakily on the street. The Fletchinder swooped down, landing gracefully on his shoulder. Its feathers were warm, its weight solid and reassuring. It nudged his cheek with its beak, letting out a soft, satisfied coo. "Thank you," Izuku whispered, reaching up to gently slide its fiery neck. It leaned into the touch. He recalled it with a thought. The Fletchinder dissolved into red light and streamed back into the flame-patterned pokeball that reappeared in his hand. He tucked it safely into his pocket beside Togetix, a fierce grin spreading across his face. This was his quirk. This was his power. He wasn't useless. He wasn't crazy. He was in the UA entrance exam, and he was fighting. Fueled by newfound confidence, Izuku plunged deeper into the battle zone. He moved with purpose now, scanning alleyways and rooftops. He spotted a 2-point spiderbot scaling a building. A flash of brown fur darted into an alley, Buniri. He focused, channeling the intent. The familiar hum, the flash of light, the pokeball appearing, this one cream with a brown paw print. He released Buniri onto a nearby awning. "Buniri! Quick! Jump onto its back! Pound its central joint!" Buniri didn't need telling twice. With incredible agility, it bounded from the awning, landed lightly on the spiderbot's carapace, and delivered a swift, powerful kick with its strong hind legs right at the junction of its main body and leg assembly. Metal shrieked. The bot lost its grip and plummeted to the street below, shattering on impact. 2 points. Examinee 2237. He saw Pidgey circling high above, acting as a spotter. He didn't summon it yet, saving its energy. He saw Vulpix's fiery tail flicker behind a pile of rubble near a cluster of 3-point bots, but held back, wary of uncontrolled fire in the urban environment. He used Fletchinder again, directing precise ember attacks to cripple joints and sensors, racking up points with methodical efficiency. Each successful capture and command solidified his understanding, his control. The Pokeball appeared when he needed them, when the connection sparked. The Pokémon responded to his intent, his desperate need to help, to prove himself. He was so focused, riding the wave of adrenaline and points, that he almost missed the cry. Help! It was a girl's voice, sharp with terror. He skidded around a corner. Ahead, a massive three-pointer, a hulking behemoth with multiple cannons, had cornered the brown-haired girl, Uraraka Ochako, against a dead-end alley. Debris blocked her escape. The robot raised a massive, crushing fist, ready to slam down. Uraraka slapped her hands onto a chunk of concrete rubble, making it float. She hurled it, but it bounced harmlessly off the three-pointer's thick armor. She was out of options, eyes wide with fear. Izuku didn't think. He acted. He sprinted towards her, his mind racing. Fletchinder was tired from its last attack. Pidgey was too small. Vulpix, too risky. Togetic, unknown. But Buniri was fast. Agile. But it couldn't stop that fist alone. His gaze snapped to a patch of struggling greenery pushing through a crack in the alley wall, a small, tough-looking plant with a thick bud on its back. And nestled beside it, half hidden behind a broken pipe, was a small, quadrupedal creature. Blue-green skin, large, intelligent eyes, and the most distinctive feature, a healthy green plant bulb nestled on its back. Bulbasaur. The name resonated instantly. He'd never seen it before, but it felt right. Perfect. Catch it. The instinct screamed. Save her. He focused every ounce of his will, his terror for Uraraka, his need to protect, towards the small Pokémon. The connection hummed, stronger than before. Golden light flashed. A Pokeball, green with a stylized leaf pattern, appeared in his hand. He didn't throw it towards Bulbasaur. He threw it towards the space between Uraraka and the descending fist, aiming at the patch of struggling plants near the creature. Bulbasaur. No. Vine Whip. Grab that rubble. He pointed desperately at the floating concrete chunk Uraraka had tried to use. The Pokeball snapped open. Crimson light coalesced into the small, blue-green dinosaur-like Pokémon. It blinked, momentarily startled by the chaos. But Izuku's command, fueled by raw urgency, pierced its confusion. It focused. Two long, whip-like vines shot out from the bulb on its back with surprising speed and strength. They lashed out not at the robot, but at the floating chunk of concrete rubble near Uraraka. Simultaneously, Izuku recalled Buniri's Pokeball and threw it towards Uraraka herself. Buniri! Get her out of there! Now! Buniri materialized mid-air in a flash of cream light, landing lightly beside the terrified girl. It didn't hesitate. It grabbed Uraraka's arm with surprising strength just as Bulbasaur's vines yanked the floating concrete chunk upwards. The timing was critical. The massive robot fist slammed down onto the chunk of rubble Bulbasaur had just hauled into its path. Crunch. Concrete shattered. Dust exploded. The robot's fist was embedded in the debris, momentarily stuck. Whoa! Uraraka gasped as Buniri bodily pulled her back, stumbling away from the shower of fragments. Uraraka! Release it! Izuku yelled. Understanding flashed in her eyes. She slapped her hands together. Release! The rubble chunk instantly regained its weight. Combined with the force of the robot trying to pull its fist free, the entire mass of concrete and metal lurched downwards. The three-pointer, unbalanced and trapped, toppled forward with an earth-shaking crash, its head smashing into the alley wall. Sparks flew. Its systems shorted out. 3 points. Examinee 2237. Rescue points awarded to Examinee 2237 and Examinee 2543. Silence descended, broken only by the groaning of damaged metal and Izuku's ragged breathing. Dust settled, revealing the wrecked robot, the small Bulbasaur retracting its vines with a satisfied chirp, and Buniri gently helping a stunned Uraraka to her feet. Uraraka stared at Izuku, then at Buniri, then at Bulbasaur. Her eyes were huge. You saved me, she breathed. With a bunny? And a dinosaur plant. She blinked, a wobbly smile spreading across her face. That was amazing. Izuku recalled Buniri and Bulbasaur, the Pokeball vanishing back into his pockets. Relief, so profound it made his knees weak, washed over him, followed by a fierce warmth. She'd seen them. She'd thanked him. He stammered, a blush creeping up his neck. I'm glad you're okay. Before he could say more, the speakers crackled. Time's up. The practical exam is now concluded. Please make your way to the exit gates. High above the simulated city, perched on the observation deck of UA's main building, Toshinori Yagi watched the screens displaying feeds from all battle centers. His skeletal frame was hunched, but his blue eyes, sharp and analytical, missed nothing. He'd seen the explosive start of the spiky-haired boy, Bakugo Katsuki, impressive raw power, zero restraint. He'd seen the efficient speed of the bespectacled Ida boy. He'd seen the creative application of the pink girl's acid. But his gaze kept returning to Battle Center B. To examinee 2237, Midoriya Izuku. He'd seen the initial panic, the stumble. Then, the sudden, impossible summoning of the fiery bird. The precise destruction. The clear points. Then the rescue. The seamless coordination between two distinct creatures, the agile mammal and the plant reptile, executed under extreme duress. The boy hadn't just used a quirk, he'd commanded. Remarkable, All Might murmured, his voice a raspy whisper only he could hear. He'd seen many emitter quirks, many summoning types. But this felt different. The creatures weren't constructs of energy. They weren't projections. They looked alive, intelligent. And the way they appeared, that brief flash of golden light before the red containment, it resonated with something deep within him, something tied to the ember of one for all flickering in his own chest. A bridge to something other. The boy's file listed him as Quirkless until very recently. A late bloomer? Or something else entirely? His desperate courage, his instinct to save, it shone brighter than any flashy explosion. He'd earned significant villain points. But the rescue points, saving that girl with such quick thinking and coordination, that was the mark of a true hero. On the main scoreboard display, names began to populate. Bakugo was near the top with sheer destructive power. Ida was high with speed and efficiency. And there, climbing steadily, Midoriya Izuku. His villain points were solid. But his rescue points, they were surging, placing him firmly in the upper ranks. All Might allowed a small, genuine smile to touch his thin lips. The boy who saved others. The boy who saw things no one else could. A bridge. Perhaps the bridge one for all needed to cross into a new era. He watched as Midoriya walked shakily towards the exit gate, surrounded by murmurs and odd glances, a small, disbelieving smile finally breaking through his exhaustion. He passed. Against all odds he passed. Young Midoriya, All Might whispered, the name settling with a strange sense of rightness. What are you? The question wasn't fearful. It was filled with a dawning, electrifying curiosity. The entrance exam was over. The real journey, for both of them, was just beginning. ## Chapter 4, Heroes and Ghost Types. The polished door to Class 1A felt heavier than the entrance exam gates. Izuku stood before it, the muffled buzz of conversation leaking through, his hand hovering over the handle. The elation of passing, the thrill of seeing his name high on the acceptance list, had been replaced by a familiar, gnawing anxiety. He'd done it with Pokémon. Everyone saw him do it. Yet, the memory of Bakugo's burning notebook, the whispers of freak and cheater, clung like riverbank mud. What would they think here? What would Aizawa think? Taking a deep, shuddering breath that did little to calm the frantic flutter of Pidgey's wings, he felt echoing in his chest, a constant, comforting presence perched invisibly on the hallway light fixture. He slid the door open. A wave of focused energy hit him. Students were already seated, chatting, sizing each other up. He spotted the vibrant pink of Ishido Mina, the stiff posture of Ida Tenya chopping his hand as he lectured a bored-looking Kaminari, the gravity-defying hair of Uraraka Achiko who beamed and waved enthusiastically when she saw him. And there, slouched near the back window, radiating simmering contempt, was Bakugo Katsuki. His crimson eyes locked onto Izuku, narrowing instantly, a silent promise of future conflict. Izuku scurried towards the only empty seat, front row center, feeling dozens of eyes track him. Whispers followed. That's him, right? The one with the animals. Summoning Quirk? Looked crazy strong during the exam. Did you see that fiery bird? And the plant dinosaur thing? Where do they go? He kept his gaze fixed on the pristine desktop, fingers tracing the reassuring outlines of the Pokeball hidden deep in his pockets, Fletchinder's warm flame pattern, Buniri's soft cream, Bulbasaur's leafy green, Togetic's smooth cream and blue. Proof. But also targets. The door slammed open. A collective gasp rippled through the room as a ragged yellow sleeping bag unzipped from the floor near the podium, revealing the perpetually exhausted figure of Shota Aizawa. His dark eyes, sharp and bloodshot, scanned the class like a predator assessing prey. The chatter died instantly. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down after I entered, Aizawa stated, his voice flat and devoid of inflection. Time is a precious resource you heroes in training can't afford to waste. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Rational deceptions will be your first foundational heroics class today. He pulled a stack of folded blue uniforms from his sleeping bag. Change into these and meet me at ground beta in 10 minutes. Anyone late gets expelled. A stunned silence followed his exit, broken only by the frantic rustle of students grabbing uniforms and scrambling for the door. Izuku's heart hammered. Expelled? On the first day? He fumbled with his uniform bundle, his mind racing. Ground beta? The urban simulation zone? What kind of test? 10 tense minutes later, Class 1A stood assembled on a mock city street within ground beta. Aizawa, now out of his sleeping bag but looking no less weary, regarded them with his usual apathy. Today's test assesses your quirks and your baseline physical capabilities, he announced. A standard quirk assessment test. A collective sigh of relief went up. This sounded familiar: softball throw, standing long jump, grip strength. However, Aizawa continued, his voice cutting through the budding confidence, you'll be performing these tests using your quirks. The point is to gauge your current limits, understand your capabilities, and identify areas for improvement. His gaze, heavy and analytical, landed squarely on Izuku. Midoriya. Izuku flinched. Sensei? Your quirk. Pokémon capture and command, according to your file. Aizawa's tone gave nothing away. A late-emerging emitter type involving the summoning and control of distinct biological entities. Correct. Sensei. Izuku stammered, acutely aware of everyone's attention. Explain the mechanism. How do you capture? How many can you control simultaneously? What are their limitations? Can they be harmed? What happens if they are? The questions came rapid-fire, clinical and probing. Izuku felt sweat prickle his brow. I capture them by forming a connection? It's hard to explain, Sensei. It happens when I need them, when I feel a strong urge to help or protect. A golden light appears, and they become contained in a Pokeball. He pulled Fletchinder's ball from his pocket, holding it up. The flame pattern seemed dull in the daylight. I can recall them to the ball instantly. I'm not sure about simultaneous control yet. I've only commanded 1 or 2 at a time. And they can be hurt. The memory of the Togepi's cracked shell flashed painfully. When they're badly injured, they vanish back into light, into the ball, to recover. I think. He finished lamely, feeling utterly inadequate under Aizawa's impassive stare. Aizawa hummed, a non-committal sound. Vague. Unpredictable. Dependent on emotional state. And reliant on entities whose biology and origins are unknown and undocumented. He tilted his head slightly. From a tactical standpoint, it's a liability. What if you can't connect when you need to? What if your summoned creatures disobey or act erratically? What if an opponent targets them? Izuku's shoulders slumped. Aizawa's words were harsh, but they echoed his own deepest fears. He had no answers. I'll do my best, Sensei. Aizawa's eyes narrowed fractionally. See that you do. We begin with the softball throw. Bakugu, you're up first. Demonstrate what you managed in middle school. Bakugu stomped forward, a vicious grin spreading across his face. Finally, a chance to show you extras how it's done. He grabbed the ball, wound up, and unleashed a deafening explosion that sent the sphere rocketing into the stratosphere with a scream of displaced air. Die! He roared as the device beeped, 705.2 meters. The class erupted in impressed murmurs. Bakugo swaggered back, shooting Izuku a look of pure disdain. Try beating that with your stupid pets, Deku. The gauntlet was thrown. Izuku's turn came sooner than he'd hoped. He walked into the throwing circle, the softball cold and heavy in his hand. Aizawa watched, expressionless. The class watched, curious, skeptical. Bakugo watched, smirking. Fletchinder could probably carry it far, but it's not really throwing. Buniri? Too small. Bulbasaur? Vine Whip might work, but he needed distance. Pure power. He scanned the nearby rooftops, the alleyways. Nothing. No new Pokémon. His existing team, none were built for this. Panic started to bubble. Think. He closed his eyes, focusing. Need distance. Power. Something strong. He thought of the entrance exam, the three-pointer, the desperation. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the warm flame-patterned ball. Fletchinder was strong. Could it carry the ball? But that wasn't throwing. Aizawa might not count it. He needed a thrower. A flicker of movement near a ventilation duct on a nearby building caught his eye. A small, purple, vaguely gaseous shape coalesced, forming a face with wide, mischievous white eyes and a perpetually grinning mouth. Ghastly. The name surfaced, cool and spectral. It bobbed playfully, seemingly oblivious to the class below. Catch it. The instinct flared, born of pure necessity. He focused his need, his desire to perform, to prove his quirk wasn't useless, towards the floating ghost. The familiar hum vibrated in his bones, faint but present. A flash of golden light, brief and localized, enveloped ghastly. A pokeball, deep purple with a stylized ghostly wisp, appeared in Izuku's other hand, cool to the touch. He didn't hesitate. He recalled Fletchinder's ball and held the softball aloft. Ghastly. Fuselic. On the ball. Hard. He threw the purple pokeball towards the softball. It snapped open midair. Crimson light coalesced into the floating, gaseous ghastly right next to the softball Izuku held. The class gasped, some stepping back instinctively at the sudden apparition of a grinning, disembodied ghost face. Gaha! Ghastly cackled, its long, thick, spectral tongue lashing out with surprising speed and solidity. What? It struck the softball like a purple whip. The ball didn't fly. It vaporized. 1 second it was there, the next, it was a fine mist of rubber and leather particles drifting slowly to the ground within the throwing circle. Silence. Utter, stunned silence. Even Bakugo looked momentarily nonplussed. Aizawa's eyebrow twitched, the closest he'd come to showing surprise. Ghastly giggled, swirling around the dissipating mist before vanishing back into its poke ball, which returned to Izuku's hand. Izuku stared at the tiny remains of the softball on the ground, then at the distance measuring device, which blinked pathetically, 0.00 meters. His face burned crimson. I'm so sorry, Sensei. I didn't mean to destroy it. I thought. You thought wrong, apparently, Aizawa stated dryly, pulling another softball from a bag. The point was to measure throwing distance, Midoriya, not molecular disintegration. Your quirk's application was ill-conceived and destructive. 0 points. He tossed him the new ball. Try again. Without obliterating school property. Snickers rippled through the class. Bakuga's laugh was the loudest, a harsh bark. Useless. Can't even throw a ball without your freaky ghosts messing it up. Humiliation washed over Izuku, hot and thick. He gripped the new ball, knuckles white. Simple. Just throw it. Use Fletchinder to carry it? But Aizawa said, throwing. He took a deep breath, wound up, and threw the ball with all his might. It arced weakly through the air, landing with a sad plop barely 60 meters away. The device beeped the pathetic number. Better, Aizawa deadpanned. At least the ball survived. Next. The rest of the tests were a mixed bag of awkwardness and mild success. For the standing long jump, he summoned Buniri. The small rabbit Pokémon, visible to all, used its powerful hind legs to leap an impressive distance, carrying Izuku piggyback after a moment of startled coordination, earning a decent, if unspectacular, score. For grip strength, Bulbasaur's vines provided surprising leverage. But for the seated toe touch and side-to-side jumps, his Pokémon offered little help, leaving him near the bottom of the rankings. Throughout, Aizawa watched, his expression unchanging, offering only terse critiques, lack of fine control, over-reliance on summoned entities, poor quirk synergy in non-combat applications. Bakugo, meanwhile, excelled in every test, his explosions granting him superhuman results, his smug superiority a constant, grating presence. Each of his triumphs was punctuated by a glare or a muttered insult directed at Izuku. As the final test wrapped up, Aizawa projected the results. Bakugo was near the top. Izuku hovered perilously close to the bottom, saved only by Buniri's jump and Bulbasaur's grip assist. Aizawa grunted, looking at the rankings. Predictable disparities. Bakugo, raw power with minimal control or regard for surroundings. Midoriya, his dark eyes pinned Izuku again. A quirk with potential versatility hampered by inconsistency, poor understanding, and tactical inflexibility. You rely entirely on factors outside your immediate control, the availability of these creatures and their specific, often unpredictable, abilities. In a real crisis, that could get people killed. Izuku flinched as if struck. The words were brutal, echoing his own anxieties. Your power isn't just summoning, Midoriya, Aizawa continued, his voice low and serious. It's assessment. It's adaptation. It's knowing which tool to use when, and how to use it effectively with what you can do. Right now, you're fumbling in the dark. Learn to see in it, or you won't last the term. He turned to the class. Dismissed. Review your results. Your weaknesses start here. As the class began to disperse, murmuring about the results and Aizawa's harshness, Bakugo shouldered past Izuku deliberately. See that, Deku? He snarled, voice low and venomous. Bottom of the barrel. Where you belong. All that flashy summoning crap means nothing if you're still weak. Still useless. Those freaky animals of yours? They're just a crutch. A joke. He leaned in, his breath hot against Izuku's ear. And I'm gonna break that crutch. Just like I broke your stupid notebook. Then everyone'll see the worthless Deku underneath. He shoved past, leaving Izuku standing alone, the taste of ash in his mouth. The walk back to the locker rooms was long and silent for Izuku. The excited chatter of his classmates about their quirks and scores felt distant, muffled. Aizawa's assessment was a cold weight in his gut. Bakugo's threat was a burning ember. Inconsistent. Unpredictable. A liability. Was that all he was? Even with his quirk revealed, even passing UA, was he still just Deku? He lingered, changing slowly after the others had left, the empty locker room echoing with the drip of a faucet and the frantic beat of his own heart. He needed air. Needed to think. He slipped out, not towards the main building, but down a quieter, less used corridor leading towards the support department workshops. The lights here were dimmer, casting long shadows. He leaned against a cool concrete wall, sliding down until he sat on the floor, knees drawn up. He pulled out Ghastly's purple pokeball, turning it over in his hands. It felt cool, faintly humming. He'd messed up spectacularly. Destroyed the ball. Proved Aizawa's point about unpredictability. What was Ghastly capable of? Why had it destroyed the ball instead of throwing it? Was it malicious? Or just playful? He had no idea. No manual. No guide. Just trial and catastrophic error. Learn to see in the dark, Aizawa's words echoed. The corridor was dark. And cold. The shadows seemed to deepen. A soft, echoing giggle drifted through the air. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Izuku froze, looking up. Near the ceiling, where the dim light from a distant fixture barely reached, the purple gaseous form of Ghastly materialized. Its wide white eyes glowed faintly in the gloom, its grin seeming wider, more mischievous. It bobbed silently, watching him. Ghastly? Izuku whispered, his voice sounding too loud in the stillness. I'm sorry about the ball. I didn't know. Ghastly giggled again, a sound like rattling chains. It drifted lower, swirling around a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. The red metal casing suddenly frosted over, a thick layer of rime spreading rapidly. Or something else. Whoa. Cool. I mean cold. Izuku scrambled to his feet, fascinated despite himself. Can you do that on command? Can you control how much? Ghastly tilted its gaseous head, then floated towards a stack of cardboard boxes in a shadowed alcove. It phased through the top box, its form becoming briefly translucent. A moment later, it reappeared on the other side, holding a dusty, forgotten wrench it had apparently found inside. It dropped the wrench with a clang, giggling. Intangibility and object manipulation? Izuku murmured, his analyst mind kicking in, momentarily overriding his despair. That's incredible. For scouting, infiltration, retrieving items from dangerous places. He pulled out his phone, opening a new note. What else can you do? Can you make things colder? Can you affect living things? Like, put them to sleep? He remembered the name hypnosis surfacing when he'd first seen it. Ghastly just giggled, swirling playfully around his head, leaving a trail of chilling air. Felt curious. Testing him. Not hostile. Just ghostly. Okay, Izuku said, a small, tentative smile touching his lips. We need to practice. Safely. Maybe we can find an empty training gym later? Or ask Mr. Aizawa. The thought of facing the Erasure hero again so soon made his smile falter. Maybe not yet. He recalled Ghastly to its ball. The corridor felt even darker and quieter afterward. But the cold knot of despair in his chest had loosened slightly. Ghastly wasn't just destructive. It had potential. He had potential. He just needed to understand it. To learn. To see what each Pokémon could truly do beyond the surface. To adapt. As he walked back towards the main building, lost in thought about Ghastly's capabilities, he almost bumped into someone rounding a corner. Oh, sorry, Midoriya. Uraraka exclaimed, bouncing back slightly. She was with Ida, who adjusted his glasses with a stern expression that softened slightly when he saw Izuku. Midoriya, are you all right? Ida asked, his voice concerned. You seemed quite distressed after Aizawa-sensei's assessment. And Bakugu's behavior was entirely uncalled for. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. I'm okay. Just thinking. That Ghastly thing was super creepy. Uraraka said, shivering dramatically. But also kinda cool. In a spooky way. That frost trick. And going through the box. Imagine using that in a rescue, like phasing through rubble to find survivors. Izuku blinked. He hadn't even considered that application. Why, that's a great idea, Uraraka. Indeed. Ida chopped his hand. While its initial application was destructive, he conceded, the underlying abilities demonstrate significant utility. With proper training and understanding, it could be a formidable asset. Do not be discouraged by a single setback, Midoriya. True heroes learn and adapt. Their words, simple and earnest, washed over him. They weren't mocking. They weren't calling him crazy. Uraraka saw potential in Ghastly spookiness. Ida saw utility beyond the softball incident. They believed in the possibilities. Thank you, Izuku stammered, a genuine warmth spreading through him, battling the lingering chill of Aizawa's critique and Bakugu's venom. Both of you? Really? Of course. Uraraka beamed. We're classmates. We gotta support each other, right? Even with weird ghost Pokémon. Precisely. Ida nodded sharply. Now, we should proceed to the cafeteria before the lunch rush becomes untenable. As they walked together, Izuku felt a flicker of hope. Aizawa was right. He needed to learn, to adapt, to understand his quirk deeply. Bakugu was a threat he couldn't ignore. But he wasn't completely alone. He had Pokémon whose abilities he was only beginning to grasp. And he had classmates, friends, maybe, who saw the potential, not just the problems. The path was dark and uncertain, filled with shadows both literal and metaphorical. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't entirely blind. He had Ghastly to help him see in the dark. And he had people willing to walk beside him. For now, that was a start. He slipped his hand into his pocket, fingers brushing the cool purple pokeball. Hey Ghastly, he thought. Let's learn what we can do. ## Chapter 5, The Legend Calls. The setting sun painted the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park in fiery hues of orange and purple, a stark contrast to the skeletal silhouette of All Might in his deflated form. The air, thick with the smell of salt and decayed machinery, felt heavy in Izuku's lungs as he hauled another rusted refrigerator door towards the designated dumpster pile. Sweat plastered his green hair to his forehead, stung his eyes, and soaked through his thin t-shirt. Every muscle screamed in protest, trembling with exhaustion that went bone deep. This wasn't just cleaning, this was All Might's brutal conditioning regimen for one for all. 107. Izuku gasped, letting the heavy metal sheet slide off his aching shoulders with a resounding clang. He doubled over, hands on his knees, skiing in ragged breaths that did little to ease the burn in his chest. The world swam slightly at the edges of his vision. He'd lost count of the hours, lost track of the individual pieces of junk. He just knew the pile seemed no smaller, and his body felt like it was dissolving into sand. Good effort, young Midoriya. All Might's voice, raspy but encouraging, came from nearby where he was effortlessly maneuvering a massive, corroded engine block. But remember, true strength isn't just physical. It's the indomitable will to push beyond your perceived limits. To reach for the impossible. Beyond. The word echoed in Izuku's pounding skull. He was beyond tired, beyond sore. He felt fractured, hollowed out. He'd pushed himself harder than ever before, fueled by the desperate need to prove himself worthy of OFA, worthy of UA, worthy of the Pokémon who depended on him. Aizawa's critique about inconsistency and reliance on external factors had become a constant, gnawing refrain. He needed to be stronger himself. He needed to be the foundation his team stood on. Weiss, All Might, Izuku wheezed, forcing himself upright. He wiped sweat from his eyes, blinking against the blur. 108. His gaze scanned the chaotic landscape for the next manageable piece. He spotted a tangled mass of rebar and wire netting near the waterline. That one. Just drag it. He took a step and his legs buckled. He didn't fall, but stumbled heavily, catching himself on a jagged piece of hull plating. A wave of dizziness washed over him, stronger this time. The crashing waves sounded muffled, distant. The cries of distant gulls faded into a high-pitched whine. His vision tunneled, the vibrant sunset colors leaching into shades of gray. The reassuring warmth of the pokeball in his cargo shorts pockets, Fletchinder's fiery pulse, Bulbasaur's steady green thrum, Buniri's soft vibration, Togetic's gentle warmth, even Ghastly's cool hum, seemed to dim, fading like a radio-losing signal. But now, panic flared, sharp and cold, cutting through the exhaustion haze. Was he losing his connection? Was pushing his body this hard damaging his quirk? The fear was paralyzing. Midoriya? All Might's voice cut through the muffled world, laced with sudden concern. He was closer now, abandoning the engine block. Are you all right, my boy? You look pale as a sheet. I'm fine, All Might, Izuku lied, pushing off the metal plate. He took another step towards the rebar. Just tripped. His voice sounded thin, reedy, even to his own ears. He reached the tangled mass, bending down to grip a protruding bar. The cold, rough metal bit into his palms. He planted his feet, gritted his teeth, and pulled. Agony lanced through his lower back. His arms trembled violently. The world tilted violently. The gray tunnel narrowed further, the whine in his ears rising to a roar. He felt consciousness slipping, a dark tide rising to claim him. He was falling. Not yet. I have to. As the darkness surged, threatening to engulf him completely, the world didn't go black. Instead, it exploded into light. Not the harsh light of the setting sun. Not the cold light of a pokeball capture. This was light made tangible, light imbued with warmth and an impossible, ethereal majesty. Golden, crimson, and emerald radiance swirled around him, banishing the gray tunnel, silencing the whine. It wasn't blinding, it was illuminating, revealing details in the rusted junk around him with impossible clarity, yet softening the edges into something dreamlike. Izuku gasped, but no sound came out. He wasn't on the beach anymore. Or rather, the beach was still there, but transformed. The piles of trash gleamed like mountains of strange, metallic jewels. The waves crashed in slow motion, their spray catching the light like scattered diamonds. And above him, impossibly vast, its wings outstretched to embrace the horizon, flew the most magnificent creature he had ever witnessed. It was a bird, yet more than a bird. Its feathers shimmered with the iridescence of a rainbow captured in flame, deep crimson bleeding into vibrant gold, edged with emerald green. Its long tail streamers trailed behind it like celestial ribbons, each plume radiating pure light. Its eyes, large and intelligent, held the wisdom of ancient mountains and the fierce compassion of a protective deity. It didn't flap, it soared on currents of pure radiance, its very presence resonating with a deep, harmonious hum that vibrated in Izuku's soul, not his ears. The name resonated not just in his mind, but in the very core of his being, a truth as fundamental as gravity. It was the embodiment of resurrection, of hope reborn from ashes. The guardian of the skies. A legend. Hoa's gaze swept over the beach, over Izuku's small, trembling form still clutching the rebar. There was no judgment in those ancient eyes, only profound understanding and a sadness so deep it resonated through the radiant light. It saw his exhaustion, his fear, his desperate determination. It saw the flickering connection to the other Pokémon, the fragile bridge he represented. And it saw the immense power slumbering within him, the power All Might offered, one for all. The magnificent head tilted slightly. A single, impossibly vibrant feather, glowing with inner fire, seemed to detach from its wing. Not falling but descending, drifting slowly, purposefully, towards Izuku. It wasn't aimed at his hand, but at his heart. Izuku felt a warmth bloom in his chest, chasing away the icy dread of near unconsciousness. It wasn't the heat of exertion, it was the comforting warmth of a hearth fire, the promise of dawn after a long night. It filled him with a sudden, inexplicable surge of pure, unwavering hope. The exhaustion didn't vanish, but its crushing weight lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace and resilience. He felt seen. Truly seen, in a way no human ever had. Seen not as Deku, the Quirkless boy, or Midoriya, the summoner, but as Izuku, the bridge. The feather dissolved inches from his chest, melting into the golden light that pulsed once, gently, then began to recede. Hoa's magnificent form started to fade, not vanishing abruptly, but becoming translucent, merging with the dying light of the sunset, its harmonious hum fading into the returning sound of the waves. The word wasn't spoken, it was felt, imprinted directly onto his spirit. Nurture. The bridge must hold. And then it was gone. The dazzling light vanished. The jeweled trash returned to rusted metal. The waves crashed normally. Izuku stood, still clutching the rebar, his knuckles white, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He wasn't unconscious. He was utterly, completely awake. The bone-deep exhaustion was still there, a heavy blanket, but the crushing despair, the fear of failure, the terror of losing his connection, they were muted, held at bay by the lingering warmth in his chest and the impossible image seared into his mind. Young Midoriya. All Might was beside him in an instant, skeletal hands gripping his shoulders, steadying him. His blue eyes, wide with alarm, scanned Izuku's face. What happened? He froze. You were white as a ghost. Did you see something? Hear something? His voice was tight with concern, a stark contrast to his usual booming bravado. Izuku blinked, slowly focusing on All Might's worried face. The radiant warmth in his chest pulsed gently. He could feel the poke ball again, Fletchinder's fiery pulse now steady, Bulbasaur's green thrum strong, the others humming softly in their unique frequencies. The connection wasn't broken, it felt reinforced. Izuku's voice cracked. He swallowed, trying to find words for the impossible. I saw. He looked up towards the sky where Ho-Oh had been, now empty except for the deepening twilight. Light. So much light. And a bird. The phoenix. Made of rainbows and fire. He met All Might's gaze, his own eyes wide with awe and lingering shock. It felt real, All Might. More real than anything. All Might didn't scoff. He didn't dismiss it as exhaustion or hallucination. His grip on Izuku's shoulders tightened slightly, his expression shifting from alarm to a profound, almost reverent seriousness. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. He looked towards the sky where Izuku had gazed, then back down at the boy, his blue eyes filled with a dawning understanding that bordered on awe. A phoenix. All Might murmured, his voice barely a whisper, yet carrying immense weight. Made of rainbows and fire. He was silent for a long moment, the only sound the rhythmic crash of the waves. When he spoke again, his voice was low, intense, filled with a gravity Izuku had never heard before. Young Midoriya, what you possess, this connection to these beings, it is far more than a simple summoning quirk. Izuku held his breath, his heart hammering against the lingering warmth in his chest. It is a bridge, All Might stated, the word resonating in the quiet dusk. A bridge to something ancient, profound. A world of spirits, of guardians, of powers that existed long before quirks, long before heroes as we know them. He looked down at his own clenched fist, the ember of one for all flickering within his frail body. One for all, it is a sacred torch, passed down to light the way for humanity. But your power, it connects to the very source of that light, to the primal forces that shape life and renewal. He placed a hand gently on Izuku's chest, over the spot where the warmth pulsed. What you saw, this Ho, it was no mere vision of exhaustion. It recognized you, young Midoriya. It recognized the bridge you are becoming. And one for all. All Might's eyes blazed with sudden conviction. One for all might be the key that unlocks the true potential of that bridge. It might allow you to not just cross it, but to strengthen it. To truly commune with these legends, not just command their lesser kin. Izuku stared, overwhelmed. A bridge? To ancient powers? One for all unlocking his quirk's true potential? It sounded like something out of his wildest childhood dreams, the kind he'd scribbled in the margins of his notebooks alongside doodles of impossible creatures. Yet, the warmth in his chest, the memory of Hoa's divine presence, felt more real, more substantial than the rusted metal beneath his feet. But All Might, Izuku stammered, the practical part of his mind wrestling with the wonder. How can I be sure? What if it was just a hallucination? What if I'm just seeing what I want to see? The old fear, the fear of being crazy Deku, whispered insidiously. All Might's expression softened. He squeezed Izuku's shoulder reassuringly. Doubt is natural, my boy. Especially with a power as unique and profound as yours. But trust the feeling. Trust the warmth you feel now. And trust, he added, a determined glint returning to his eyes, in the process. We begin your one for all training in earnest. Not just to strengthen your body to wield my power, but to strengthen your spirit to withstand the currents flowing across your bridge. To become a worthy conduit. He released Izuku and straightened up, his frail frame seeming to gather latent strength. The beach is clean enough for today. Your body has reached its limit. Meditate on what you saw. We start tomorrow at dawn. The real work begins now. The walk back from the beach was a blur. Izuku moved mechanically, his body protesting every step, but his mind was a whirlwind. The aching muscles, the salty tang of sweat, the gritty feel of sand in his shoes, these were anchors to the physical world. But the warmth in his chest was a constant, gentle pulse, a tangible reminder of the impossible light. Hoa's image replayed behind his eyelids every time he blinked, the iridescent feathers, the ancient, knowing eyes, the feather dissolving. Into his heart. Nurture. The bridge must hold. Was it real? Or was it just his desperate, oxygen-starved brain conjuring the ultimate symbol of hope as he teetered on the edge of collapse? All Might believed. All Might saw it as confirmation of something deeper. But All Might also carried the weight of a sacred power passed down through legends. Could he be projecting? Seeing significance where there was only coincidence? He reached his small apartment building, the familiar scent of home, miso soup, laundry detergent, a hint of dust, washing over him. He paused outside the door, leaning his forehead against the cool wood. He closed his eyes, focusing inward. Past the exhaustion, past the lingering tremors in his limbs, he sought the connection to his Pokémon. He felt Fletchinder's fiery restlessness, Buniri's soft, sleepy contentment, Bulbasaur's calm, rooted presence, Togetic's gentle, floating awareness, Ghastly's cool, playful curiosity. They were there. Solid. Their unique frequencies hummed against his consciousness, a quiet symphony only he could hear. That hadn't changed. If anything, the connection felt clearer, more resonant, like static had been cleared from a line. He unlocked the door and slipped inside. "I'm home," he called softly, toeing off his filthy shoes. "Inko's working late tonight, sweetie," came his mother's voice from the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel, her smile warm but instantly replaced by concern as she took in his appearance. "Izuku, you look exhausted. And filthy. Was the training with All Might that intense?" Izuku managed a weak smile. "Yeah, really intense. But good." He hesitated, the image of Ho-Oh flashing again. Should he tell her? Would she worry more? See it as another sign of his mind fracturing under stress? "I think I saw something amazing, though." Inko's brow furrowed slightly, the familiar worry shadowing her eyes, but it was tempered by curiosity. "Amazing? Like your friends?" She glanced around the small living room, as if expecting Togetic to materialize. "Bigger," Izuku whispered, his voice filled with awe he couldn't suppress. "Much bigger. A legendary bird. In the sky. Like a phoenix made of rainbows." He touched his chest unconsciously. Felt real. More real than anything. Inko stared at him for a long moment. The worry didn't vanish, but it mingled with a dawning sense of wonder. She stepped forward, placing a cool hand on his forehead, checking for fever. Finding none, she cupped his cheek. "A phoenix made of rainbows." She repeated softly. "That sounds beautiful, Izuku. And frightening?" Izuku nodded, leaning slightly into her touch. "A little, but mostly hopeful." It felt like a promise. He didn't mention the bridge, or One for All. That was All Might's secret to share. All Might, he thinks it's connected to my quirk. To something important. Inko searched his eyes, seeing the earnest awe, the lingering shock, but also a spark of something new, a fragile, hard-won confidence. She sighed, a soft sound of resignation mixed with love. "Oh, Izuku. Your world, it's so much bigger and stranger than I can imagine." She pulled him into a gentle hug, ignoring the grime. "But if All Might believes it, and if you felt it, then I believe you." She pulled back, smoothing his sweaty hair. "Now go shower. You smell like low tide and hard work. Dinner's almost ready." Later, showered and dressed in clean pajamas, Izuku picked at his dinner. The warmth in his chest persisted, a comforting ember. He replayed All Might's words, a bridge, strengthened by one for all, true potential, commune with legends. It was overwhelming, terrifying, exhilarating. He excused himself early, pleading exhaustion, which wasn't a lie. In his room, he didn't immediately collapse onto his All Might-themed bed. Instead, he sat at his desk, pulling out a fresh notebook, not his hero analysis book, but a simple, unlined journal. He opened it to the first page. At the top, he wrote in careful, determined letters, "The bridge." Below, he began to sketch. Not with his usual analytical precision, but with a sense of reverence, capturing the memory before it faded. The impossible wingspan, the cascade of rainbow feathers, the ancient, compassionate eyes. He drew Ho-Oh soaring above a tiny, stick-figure version of himself on a beach strewn with abstract shapes representing the trash. He drew the feather descending, dissolving into his chest, radiating warmth. Underneath he wrote, "Ho, guardian of the skies. Resurrection. See me." He closed the notebook, holding it against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart synchronize with the gentle pulse of warmth within. He recalled the other Pokémon, feeling their quiet presences, Fletchinder perched on his mental shoulder, Buniri curled up under his mental bed, Bulbasaur rooted near his mental window, Togetic floating serenely, Ghastly drifting playfully in the shadows. They felt more vivid, their connection more stable. Was that the effect of Ho-Oh? Or just his own perception, shifted by the experience? He crawled into bed, the exhaustion finally pulling him under. As he drifted toward sleep, the image of Ho-Oh filled his mind's eye. The warmth in his chest flared gently. Was it real? Was the legendary Pokémon truly out there? Had it truly touched him? Or was it just another invisible friend, born this time not from loneliness, but from the desperate, hope-starved mind of a boy carrying the weight of two impossible legacies? He didn't know. The doubt whispered, a cold counterpoint to the warmth. But as sleep claimed him, the final image wasn't of doubt, but of radiant feathers and ancient, knowing eyes. And the feeling that lingered wasn't fear, but the echo of a single, impossible word, resonating deep within the bridge he was becoming. Chapter 6, Fireworks and Feral Rage, Sports Festival PT1. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, a tidal wave of sound crashing against the walls of UA's massive stadium. Sunlight glinted off polished concrete and the vibrant colors of hero costumes as Class 1A stood amongst the other first-year hopefuls on the starting platform. Izuku felt the vibrations thrumming through the soles of his sneakers, matching the frantic flutter in his chest. This was it. The UA Sports Festival. The world was watching. Heroes were scouting. And Bakugo Katsuki, radiating barely contained fury a few feet away, looked ready to incinerate the entire competition just to prove a point. Izuku adjusted the collar of his simple green and black tracksuit, the closest thing he had to a hero costume that wouldn't hinder his movements or draw undue attention to his unconventional quirk. His fingers brushed the reassuring shapes of the Pokeball secured in the specialized belt hidden beneath the fabric. Fletchinder's fiery warmth, Buniri's soft pulse, Bulbasaur's steady thrum, Togetic's gentle hum, Ghastly's cool vibration, and the newest addition, Lucario's disciplined, steely resonance. They were a quiet symphony against the cacophony. He'd trained relentlessly since Aizawa's brutal assessment, pushing his body with all might and his mind with his Pokémon, forging bonds and testing strategies. But the sports festival wasn't a controlled training ground. It was chaos. It was spectacle. It was Bakugo's natural habitat. Midoriya. Ida's stiff voice cut through his reverie. The class president stood ramrod straight, his glasses glinting. Maintain focus. The obstacle course will demand peak physical and quirk synergized performance. Remember Aizawa-sensei's critique. Assessment and adaptation are paramount. All right, Ida. Izuku stammered, forcing a determined nod. He scanned the sprawling course stretching before them. Treacherous terrain of shifting platforms over water, narrow tunnels snaking through artificial rock formations, towering walls of sheer concrete, and fields littered with bizarre, potentially hazardous obstacles. Quirk obstacles. Designed to test every facet of a hero in training's capabilities. His gaze darted upwards. High above the starting line, perched on a camera gantry invisible to the throng below, a sleek, brown shape with a black mask watched the proceedings. Pidgey. His silent sentinel. High ground observation. He felt a flicker of warmth near his ankle. Peeking out from behind his leg, invisible to all but him, Buniri gave him a tiny, encouraging thumbs up with its paw. He smiled faintly. He wasn't alone. Hey, Midoriya. Uraraka bounced on her toes beside him, her gravity-defying hair bobbing. Ready to show them what your team can do? That Floatzel you mentioned? Super speedy, right? Why yeah. Izuku confirmed, recalling the sleek, blue otter-like Pokémon he'd spotted practicing incredible aquatic bursts in the UA pool during off-hours. He hadn't officially caught it yet, sensing its fiercely independent spirit, but he hoped he needed its speed today. And Fletchinder for aerial recon and disruption. His plan was forming. Floatzel's raw aquatic velocity for the water sections and sprints, Fletchinder's flight and ember attacks to clear minor obstacles or harass competitors, Buniri's agility for tricky terrain, and Lucario's precise aura sphere for heavier barriers. Assess. Listeners. Present mix amplified voice boomed, shaking the stadium. Are you ready to rumble? The first event of the UA Sports Festival is an obstacle course. A 4-kilometer gauntlet designed to separate the heroic wheat from the slacker chaff. The rules are simple: get from point A to point B. However you can. But remember, his voice dropped to a dramatic whisper. No direct attacks on other competitors. Sabotage is for villains, baby. Get set. A hush fell over the platform. Hundreds of students tensed, quirks flaring in anticipation. Bakugu's palms crackled. Todoroki's right side frosted over. Ida revved his engines. Izuku took a deep breath, centering himself, focusing on the path ahead, on the Pokémon ready to fight alongside him. He visualized the golden light, the connection. Floatzel. I need you. Gui. The starting horn blared, a deafening shriek swallowed instantly by the roar of the unleashed crowd and the surge of bodies. It was a stampede. Students shoved, leapt, blasted, and scrambled forward in a chaotic wave. Izuku was nearly bowled over, stumbling sideways before regaining his footing. Move, Deku! Bakugu roared, blasting past him with explosive force, sending several competitors flying sideways. Out of my way, extras! Izuku ignored him. Focus! He pushed forward, dodging a girl with extendable limbs and a boy whose feet turned into tank treads. The first obstacle loomed, 100-meter stretch of unstable, shifting platforms floating on a deep pool of churning, artificially turbulent water. The fastest runners were already skidding, slipping, plunging into the drink. Floatzel, I need speed on water. He focused his will, his need to traverse this challenge, towards the memory of the sleek blue otter, its powerful fluke tail, its fierce independence. The connection hummed, sharp and clear. Golden light flashed around him. A pokeball, deep blue with white wave patterns, appeared in his hand, cool and damp. He threw it towards the water's edge. Floatzel. Surf's up. Let's go. The ball snapped open. Crimson light coalesced into the streamlined form of Floatzel landing gracefully on the first bobbing platform. It glanced back at Izuku, its yellow eyes sharp and assessing, then gave a sharp bark of acknowledgement. It didn't wait. Using its powerful tail fluke, it propelled itself across the unstable platforms with astonishing speed and agility, barely touching each one before leaping to the next, leaving a wake of disturbed water. Izuku didn't hesitate. He sprinted and leapt onto the platform just vacated by Floatzel. The surface wobbled violently. He almost lost his balance, but Floatzel was already on the next one, looking back. Jump! Izuku yelled, trusting the Pokémon's timing. He leapt as Floatzel surged forward. He landed precariously on the next platform just as Floatzel launched itself to the one after. It was a frantic, high-stakes game of leapfrog. Izuku pushed his legs to their limit, trusting Floatzel's instinctive pathfinding and incredible aquatic propulsion. He saw other students struggling, Su Azui frog leaping with skill, a boy with water-walking Quirk cautiously advancing, others floundering. Bakugu blasted overhead, propelled by explosions, scorching the air. Todoroki created an ice path and glided effortlessly across. But Izuku and Floatzel were a blur. The blue otter was pure kinetic energy, its movements fluid and powerful, anticipating the platform shifts, creating a rapid, if dizzying, pathway. Izuku's muscles burned, his lungs screamed, but they crossed the treacherous water section in half the time of most competitors, emerging onto solid ground near the front of the pack. He recalled Floatzel with a grateful thought. The blue pokeball returned to his belt. The crowd roared, a mix of confusion and awe at the sudden appearance and disappearance of the sleek water weasel. Whoa! Did you see that blue thing? Summoned it mid-stride. Like a living jet ski. Midoriya Izuku from 1A is making waves, folks. Present mix commentary echoed. Talk about unconventional transportation. Izuku didn't pause to bask. The next obstacle was a narrow, winding tunnel system through artificial rock formations. Darkness loomed within, punctuated by sporadic, flickering emergency lights. Perfect for ambushes or traps. He could already hear the sounds of struggle echoing from within, grunts, crashes, the hum of energy quirks. Recon. Fletchinder. He summoned the fiery bird in a flash of crimson light. Fletchinder materialized above him, screeching a challenge. Fletchinder, light the way. Watch for traps or blockers ahead. Fletchinder shrieked, diving into the tunnel mouth, its fiery plumage casting flickering, dancing shadows on the rough walls. Izuku sprinted in after it. Inside, chaos reigned. Students were bottlenecked, shoving, using quirks to squeeze past or hinder others. A boy with sticky limbs tried to web up the passage. A girl emitted blinding flashes of light. Fletchinder weaved through the confusion, its keen eyes spotting hazards. Ember. Left. Izuku yelled, seeing a tripwire glint in Fletchinder's light. The bird spat a small fireball, severing the wire harmlessly before it could snap up. Right. Rockfall. Fletchinder screeched, veering sharply as a cluster of rocks dislodged from the ceiling, narrowly missing Izuku thanks to the warning. It wasn't attacking competitors, but clearing the path, illuminating dangers, its fiery presence scattering those who might try to crowd him. Izuku navigated the tunnels with surprising speed, guided by his aerial scout. He emerged into sunlight, blinking, near the head of the pack. Bakugo and Todoroki were just ahead, locked in a silent battle for the lead, Bakugo blasting forward, Todoroki freezing the ground under Bakugo's feet. Ida was a blur of motion, gaining rapidly. Fletchinder circled above, recalling itself in a streak of red light back to its ball. Next came the towering walls. 3 stories high, sheer concrete, spaced intermittently. Some students scaled them with climbing quirks or sheer strength. Others were stuck, searching for handholds. Todoroki simply created an ice ramp and ran up. Bakugo blasted upwards in short, violent bursts. Agility. Verticality. Buniri. The brown rabbit Pokémon appeared beside Izuku in a flash of cream light. Buniri. We go. Use jump kick on the ledges. Buniri nodded, its powerful legs coiling. Izuku braced himself. With incredible strength, Buniri leapt, landing on a small ledge halfway up the first wall. Izuku scrambled, finding footholds Buniri indicated with sharp chirps. As he reached the ledge, Buniri leapt again higher, landing near the top. It leaned down, extending a surprisingly strong paw. Izuku grabbed it, and Buniri hauled him up effortlessly. They repeated the process for each wall, Buniri's phenomenal jumping power and Izuku's determined climbing, working in perfect tandem. They cleared the walls faster than many with climbing-specific quirks, Izuku's arms burning but his spirit soaring. The crowd cheered the unusual duo, the green-haired boy and the fluffy brown rabbit scaling impossible heights. Look at that bunny go. Is it super strong? Midoriya's got a whole zoo helping him. Coordinated like a pro. As they landed after the final wall, a wide, open field stretched before them, the final stretch visible in the distance. But this wasn't empty ground. It was the Quirk Calamity Zone. Geysers of sticky glue erupted randomly. Patches of ground turned frictionless. Force fields flickered into existence without warning. Spinning blades emerged from hidden panels. It was a chaotic, unpredictable gauntlet designed to punish recklessness and reward quick thinking. Ida was navigating it with incredible speed and precision, his engines whining as he dodged and weaved. Todoroki used ice walls to block geysers and create paths. Bakugo blasted obstacles out of his way, leaving scorch marks and debris. Precision. Disruption. Lucario. Izuku summoned the Aura Pokémon. Lucario materialized in a stance of calm readiness, its blue and black fur rippling slightly, its red eyes scanning the chaotic field. Lucario. Aura sphere on the glue geysers just before they erupt. Disrupt the force fields. Guide me through. Lucario nodded, its paws glowing blue. It moved with disciplined grace, launching small, precise aura spheres that detonated just as glue geysers began to surge, neutralizing the sticky torrents in midair. It pulsed aura energy at flickering force fields, causing them to destabilize and vanish milliseconds before Izuku reached them. It pointed with sharp barks, indicating safe paths through spinning blades and frictionless patches. Izuku ran, trusting Lucario implicitly. It was like having a hyper-aware, incredibly powerful guardian angel. He dodged, weaved, and sprinted, following Lucario's guidance, feeling the pulse of its protective aura. They were gaining on the leaders. Bakugo, Todoroki, Ida. They were just ahead, nearing the exit of the Calamity Zone. Midoriya Izuku is closing the gap. Present Mike yelled. His summoned entities are working in perfect harmony. It's like a well-oiled machine. Or a well-trained menagerie. Izuku pushed harder, Lucario keeping pace beside him, its focus absolute. They were almost through. The exit arch beckoned. Suddenly, Lucario's head snapped to the left, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Its aura sensors flared. Danger! Izuku followed its gaze. Off to the side, near a cluster of fake boulders, a commotion was happening. A student with a rock manipulation quirk had lost control, causing a minor landslide that trapped another competitor, a girl from general studies, her leg pinned under rubble, screaming as a malfunctioning spinning blade trap emerged from the ground nearby, whirring menacingly towards her. The leaders ahead didn't stop. Bakugo blasted onward. Todoroki glanced back but kept running. Ida hesitated for a fraction of a second, his engine stuttering, but the finish line was so close. Izuku didn't hesitate. He skidded to a halt. Lucario, help her. Aura sphere that blade. Now. Lucario reacted instantly. It spun, abandoning its protective stance beside Izuku, and launched a larger, more powerful aura sphere. Across the field and slammed into the base of the spinning blade mechanism just as it lurched towards the trapped girl. The machinery shattered in a shower of sparks and metal fragments, the blade clattering harmlessly to the ground. Buniri! Izuku yelled, summoning the rabbit again. Help Lucario move the rocks. Carefully! Buniri darted forward, joining Lucario, who was already using its strength and aura-enhanced paws to carefully shift the rubble pinning the girl's leg. Izuku sprinted towards them, his heart pounding. He reached the girl just as Lucario and Buniri freed her leg. It looked bruised but not broken. Are you okay? He gasped, helping her up. Weiss. Thank you, she stammered, tears of pain and relief in her eyes. That blade. Can you walk? Izuku asked urgently. Behind him, dozens of students streamed past, ignoring the scene, focused only on the finish line. I think so, she tried to put weight on it, wincing. Lean on me, Izuku said, slinging her arm over his shoulder. We need to get out of this zone. He recalled Buniri and Lucario, their jobs done. Supporting the girl, he half-dragged, half-carried her towards the exit of the Calamity Zone, moving much slower now. The leaders were long gone. He saw Kirishima, Tokoyami, and Uraraka pass them, Uraraka giving him a worried thumbs up. He finally stumbled out of the hazard zone with the girl, setting her down gently near a medical bot that zoomed over. She needs help. Izuku panted. The bot beeped, scanning the girl. Acknowledged. Assistance rendered. Izuku nodded, turning back towards the final stretch, a long, straight run to the tunnel leading into the stadium. He was far behind now. Dozens, maybe hundreds, were ahead. He had to make up time. He summoned Fletchinder again. Fletchinder, give me a boost. Quick! The fiery bird swooped low. Izuku grabbed its talons as it beat its wings powerfully, lifting him slightly off the ground, not enough to fly, but enough to drastically reduce friction. He ran with all his might, Fletchinder acting like a living speed booster, his feet barely skimming the ground. They shot forward like a rocket, weaving past startled competitors. He was gaining. He could see the tunnel entrance. Bakugo and Todoroki were already vanishing inside, locked in their final sprint. Ida was a blue blur just ahead. Uraraka was using her quirk on herself, floating and propelling herself forward with kicks. Almost. Just a little more. He poured on the speed, Fletchinder straining. He entered the dim tunnel, the roar of the crowd inside the stadium growing deafening. The finish line was a strip of light at the end. Suddenly, a flash of movement in the shadows to his left. A low, guttural growl, filled with pain and fury. Izuku's head snapped around. Crouched behind a discarded piece of tunnel scaffolding, hackles raised, teeth bared in a vicious snarl, was a Pokémon. But unlike any he'd seen before in UA. It was canine, roughly knee-high, covered in coarse, dark gray fur. Its underbelly was a dirty tan, and its muzzle, paws, and the tips of its pointed ears were a deep, bruised black. Jagged, bone-like ridges protruded from its back and the top of its head. Its eyes, glowing a malevolent crimson in the tunnel gloom, were fixed not on Izuku, but on its own hind leg, trapped and bleeding where it had been caught beneath a fallen metal beam. It thrashed weakly, a whine escaping its snarl. Hana. The name surfaced, heavy with darkness and pain. But, feral. Injured. And radiating pure, defensive rage. Izuku skidded to a halt, Fletchinder releasing him with a confused squawk. The finish line was right there. Ida blurred past him. Kirishima hardened and charged through. Uraraka floated by, calling his name. But Izuku couldn't move. The Hounder's pain, its terror, its trapped fury, it resonated through his bridge, a discordant shriek against the symphony of his captured Pokémon. He saw the Togepi again, kicked and broken. He saw the fear in his mother's eyes. He saw the isolation of being unseen, unheard. Nurture, protect, Poa's silent command echoed. He couldn't leave it. Not like this. Not trapped, terrified, and lashing out. Easy, Izuku whispered, slowly approaching the trapped Houndar, hands held out palm up, non-threatening. Easy there. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help. He recalled Fletchinder, the red light momentarily illuminating the Hounder's snarling face. The Houndour snapped at the air near his hand, a warning growl rumbling deep in its chest. Its crimson eyes blazed with mistrust and agony. It thrashed again, yelping as the beam shifted, pinning its leg tighter. Shoo, it's okay, Izuku murmured, his voice low and steady, projecting calm despite his own racing heart. He needed to free it. But how? The beam was heavy. Bulbasaur's vine whip? Too slow. Lucario's strength? Might startle it more. He needed to calm it first. To connect. Catch it not just physically but in spirit. He knelt slowly, maintaining eye contact. He poured his intent towards the Houndour, not a command, not a capture, but an offer. Safety. Relief. He visualized the golden light, not as a cage, but as a healing embrace. He felt the familiar hum resonate in his bones, softer this time, gentler, attuned to the Hounder's pain and fear. The Houndour stopped thrashing. It watched him, panting, its growl softening to a confused whimper. Its crimson eyes flickered, the raw fury momentarily clouded by uncertainty. It could feel it. The bridge. The offer. Just let me help, Izuku whispered, inching closer, his hand slowly reaching towards the beam, not the Pokémon. I'll get this off you. The golden light flared, warm and inviting, enveloping the Houndour. It flinched, but didn't snap. The light pulsed, soothing, promising release from pain. A pokeball, black as coal with jagged orange markings like embers, appeared in Izuku's hand. He didn't throw it. He held it, the light intensifying, flowing towards the trapped leg. As the light touched the metal beam, it didn't vanish. Instead, it seemed to phase slightly, just enough for Izuku to see the pressure point. But, with a surge of adrenaline, Izuku braced his shoulder against the beam and heaved. It shifted. Just an inch, but it was enough. The Houndour yelped, scrambling backwards, dragging its injured leg free as the beam settled back with a clang. It stood, trembling, favoring the leg, staring at Izuku. The golden light faded. The black pokeball felt warm and heavy in Izuku's hand. The Houndour snarled. Again, but it was weaker now, laced with confusion. It took a limping step back, then another, its eyes locked on Izuku's. Izuku stayed perfectly still, the pokeball held loosely. It's okay, he repeated softly. You're free. You can go. The Houndour hesitated. It sniffed the air. It looked from its freed leg to Izuku, to the Pokeball, then back to the dark recesses of the tunnel. The internal battle was visible in its tense posture, the conflicting snarls and whimpers. Then, with a final, guttural growl that sounded more like a wounded plea than a threat, it turned and limped rapidly into the shadows, vanishing from sight. Izuku let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He looked down at the warm black Pokeball in his hand. He hadn't captured it. Not fully. But the connection had sparked. The bridge had been offered. The ball was proof. He tucked it into his belt, a new, volatile presence added to his team. He turned back towards the finish line, the roar of the crowd a stark reminder of where he was. He'd lost valuable time. Dozens more competitors streamed past him into the stadium tunnel. He was nowhere near the top ranks. He started to run again, his legs heavy, his heart pounding for a different reason. As he burst out of the tunnel and into the blinding light and deafening noise of the stadium, crossing the finish line to scattered, confused applause, a sharp, burning pain flared across his forearm. He looked down. 3 parallel lines, red and angry, welled up with blood. Claw marks. The Houndour, in its panicked scramble backwards, had lashed out instinctively as it pulled free. The crowd gasped, the murmur shifting from confusion to shock and concern. High up in the commentator's booth, Shota Aizawa watched the replay on the monitor, the boy stopping for the trapped girl, the encounter with the feral, injured creature in the tunnel, the lashing claws. His capture weapon shifted slightly around his neck. His dark eyes, usually heavy with exhaustion, were sharp and analytical. He watched Midoriya clutch his bleeding arm, looking more concerned about the vanished Houndour than his own injury or his abysmal placement. "Problem child," Aizawa murmured, his voice barely audible over the din. The question wasn't about points or placement anymore. It was about control. About nature. About the fundamental risk of building a hero's foundation on creatures born of shadow and pain. Are these things you summon truly tameable? ## Chapter 7, Myth Awakens, Sports Festival PT2. The roar of the stadium was a physical thing, a wall of sound pressing against Izuku's eardrums as he stood opposite Bakugo Katsuki in the center of the massive arena. Dust motes danced in the harsh afternoon sun, kicked up by the previous battles. The air crackled, thick with ozone and unbridled fury, Bakugo's fury. Crimson eyes, narrowed to slits, burned into Izuku with an intensity that promised annihilation. Izuku's arm throbbed beneath the hastily applied bandage, 3 stark lines of pain left by the wild Houndour. The black Pokeball at his belt hummed with a volatile, sullen heat, a stark counterpoint to the reassuring pulses of his other partners. Fletchinder was exhausted, Buniri bruised, Bulbasaur conserving energy, Togetic serene but watchful, Ghastly coolly observant. Lucario stood beside him, a pillar of calm blue resolve, its aura sensors subtly scanning Bakugo, assessing the threat. The Houndour's feral rage echoed in Izuku's memory, a chilling reminder of the untamed power he now carried, untested and dangerous. Midoriya Izuku vs Bakugo Katsuki. Present mix amplified voice boomed, shaking the very foundations. The final match of the first-year stage. Get ready for a battle royal. Begin. Bakugo didn't wait for the echo to fade. He exploded forward, a human missile propelled by twin detonations from his palms. The distance vanished. His right fist, wreathed in smoke and concussive force, aimed like a piston at Izuku's face. Daidikyu. Too fast. Izuku's mind screamed. Instinct, honed by months of training and terror, took over. Lucario. Detect. Aura Sphere Intercept. The command was a mental shout, bypassing speech. Lucario blurred. It stepped into the path of the blow, its body radiating a brilliant blue aura. Bakugo's fist slammed into the shimmering energy field with a thunderous crack. Not of bone, but of displaced force. The aura sphere Lucario had been forming in its other paw detonated simultaneously, a concussive blast point-blank against Bakugo's chest. Boom. The explosion rocked the arena. Smoke billowed. Bakugo was thrown back, skidding across the concrete, a snarl ripping from his throat. Lucario staggered, its aura shield flickering, smoke curling from its fur where Bakugu's blast had seared it. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Izuku didn't pause. Bakugu wouldn't stay down. Fletchinder. Air support. Ember barrage. Disrupt him. He threw the fiery ball. Fletchinder materialized high above, shrieking, and unleashed a rapid-fire volley of small, targeted fireballs, not aimed to injure, but to force Bakugu to dodge, to break his momentum. Bakugu roared, batting aside the embers with explosions from his free hand, his eyes never leaving Izuku. Hiding behind your pets. Pathetic. He launched himself again, this time angling wide, trying to flank Lucario. I'll blast you to nothing. Ghastly. Intangibility. Phase through, use Confuse Ray on his periphery. Izuku commanded, throwing the purple ball. Ghastly materialized partially inside the concrete floor near Bakugu's path, its gaseous form swirling. It lunged upwards, phasing through Bakugu's leg, its wide white eyes flashing with disorienting, multicolored light right beside Bakugu's face. Bakugu flinched violently, snarling as the disorienting lights flickered at the edge of his vision. Get off me, spooky crap. He swiped a crackling hand through Ghastly, his palm passing harmlessly through the intangible gas. The momentary distraction was enough. Lucario. Force palm. Now. Lucario, recovered, surged forward, its palm glowing blue. It slammed the aura-infused strike into Bakugu's side just as he was recovering from Ghastly's assault. Bakugu grunted, the air driven from his lungs. He was sent sprawling again, tumbling across the arena floor. Cheers erupted for Izuku's tactics. Boos rained down for Bakugu's aggression. Midoriya's strategy is impeccable. Mike yelled, using his diverse summons for disruption, defense, and precision strikes. Bakugu's raw power is undeniable, but he's getting outmaneuvered. Aizawa's grunt was barely audible over the din, but his eyes were sharp. Too coordinated. Too reliant. What happens when one falters? Bakugu pushed himself up, breathing heavily, smoke curling from his gauntlets. Rage contorted his face, but beneath it, a terrifying coldness settled. He wasn't just angry, he was focused. He'd underestimated Deku's teamwork. Not again. Think you're clever, Deku? Bakugu spat, wiping blood from a split lip. Using your freaky zoo to hide your weakness? Fine. I'll burn the whole menagerie down. He slammed his hands together. Stun grenade. A blinding flash, 10 times brighter than any of Fletchinder's embers, erupted from Bakugu's palms. It wasn't just light, it was concussive, deafening. The wave of force and brilliance washed over the arena. Izuku cried out, throwing his arms up instinctively, blinded, ears ringing. Lucario staggered, its aura sensors overloading, momentarily stunned. Fletchinder shrieked, disoriented, veering wildly. Ghastly shrieked and instinctively retreated into its ball, the intense light painful to its spectral senses. The crowd roared, half in awe, half in shock at the sudden sensory assault. Bakugu didn't hesitate. He shot forward like a bullet, not at Izuku, but at the stunned Lucario. Die, you overgrown mutt. He reared back, his entire arm glowing dangerously, gathering an immense amount of explosive power. AP shot, autocannon. A rapid-fire barrage of concentrated, armor-piercing explosions erupted from his fist, each blast smaller than his usual fare but terrifyingly precise and fast, aimed directly at Lucario's head and torso. It was a killing blow, modified only by the tournament rules, but designed to utterly incapacitate. No. Lucario! Izuku screamed, his vision clearing just in time to see the deadly barrage unleashed. He couldn't recall Lucario fast enough. He couldn't get there. Despair, cold and sharp, lanced through him. Lucario, still reeling from the stun grenade, managed to raise its arms, aura flaring defensively. But it was too late, too disoriented. The first 2 blasts slammed into its crossed arms, shattering its guard. The next 3 struck its chest and shoulder. Lucario was engulfed in smoke and fire. A pained yelp, sharp and canine, cut through the explosions before being silenced. The blue and black form was hurled backwards like a rag doll, crashing hard against the arena wall with a sickening thud before slumping to the ground, motionless. Its poke ball materialized beside Izuku's foot, its usual steely resonance replaced by a faint, pained thrum. The crowd fell silent. Even present Mike was momentarily speechless. Izuku stared, frozen. The image of the Togepi cracking under Bakugu's foot flashed, merging with the sight of Lucario, his steadfast guardian, blasted into unconsciousness. Rage, white-hot and primal, unlike anything he'd ever felt, erupted within him. It wasn't just anger at Bakugu, it was fury at the pain inflicted on a being that trusted him, that fought for him. It was the feral snarl of the Houndour echoing in his soul. It was the crushing despair of being Quirkless, the mocking whispers, the burning notebook, all coalescing into a single, scorching point. Bakugu! The scream tore from Izuku's throat, raw and guttural, echoing in the sudden silence. Tears of pure, incandescent fury streamed down his face. He forgot the crowd, forgot the rules, forgot everything except the smoking form of Lucario and the sneering face of his tormentor. Bakugu grinned, a feral, triumphant thing. "That's right, that cried. "That's all you're good for. Now it's your turn." He lunged, palm crackling with a massive, building explosion. Howitzer! Izuku didn't think. He reacted. The bridge within him, usually a carefully tended path, became a conduit for a storm. He didn't reach for a pokeball. He reached for the source. He reached for the primal fury of the storm, for the righteous anger of the heavens. He channeled every ounce of his rage, his grief, his desperate need to strike back, into the ember of one for all burning in his core. He didn't try to contain it, he tried to fuse it with the wild, untamed energy flowing through his bridge to the world beyond. Zapdos! The name wasn't spoken, it was roared, a thunderclap ripped from his soul, amplified by the raw power surging through him. It wasn't a summoning, it was an invocation. The world bent. The air pressure plummeted. A deafening crack of thunder, impossibly loud, split the sky inside the stadium dome, shaking the very structure. Light fixtures shattered. The sun seemed to dim as an unnatural storm front materialized above the arena, swirling black and purple clouds shot through with violent streaks of lightning. And then it descended. Not from the sky, but from Izuku. From the space around him, coalescing in a blinding, terrifying eruption of pure, electric wrath. A creature of legend, dwarfing any Pokémon Izuku had ever summoned. Its body was a sleek, avian form crackling with yellow lightning, its wings vast and jagged like storm clouds, trailing bolts of energy. Its beak was sharp and cruel, its eyes burning orbs of pure, white-hot lightning. A deafening, ear-splitting shriek tore from its throat, the sound of a thunderstorm given voice. Zapdos. The embodiment of savage lightning, of untamed, destructive power. It hovered for a nanosecond, a deity of wrath made manifest, its gaze locking onto Bakugu Katsuki, who stood frozen mid-lunge, his howitzer pose forgotten, his eyes wide with utter, primal terror. The sheer, overwhelming presence of the legendary Pokémon radiated pure, annihilating power. It wasn't just visible, it was tangible, a pressure that forced the breath from every lung in the stadium. That moved. A blinding streak of yellow light. Faster than thought. Faster than sound. It crossed the distance between Izuku and Bakugu in less than a blink. There was no technique, no finesse. Only pure, unadulterated force. Zapdos didn't attack, it simply was the attack. The impact wasn't an explosion, it was a localized supernova. A sphere of blinding white light and concussive thunder enveloped the spot where Bakugu stood. The concrete floor vaporized in an instant, replaced by a crater 10 feet wide, molten at the edges. A shockwave ripped outwards, shattering the remaining undamaged lights, cracking the arena walls, and sending spectators reeling back in their seats. The sound was beyond deafening. It was a physical assault, a wall of pure noise that shook bones and rattled teeth. The light vanished as suddenly as it appeared. Zapdos was gone. Vanished. Not recalled. Dissipated like storm clouds after the lightning strike. Silence. Utter, profound silence. The kind that follows a cataclysm. Dust rained down like gray snow. Smoke curled from the edges of the massive crater. The swirling storm clouds above dissipated as quickly as they formed. In the center of the devastation, Bakugo Katsuki lay unconscious. His costume was shredded and scorched black. His arms were outstretched, palms blistered and raw. His face was pale beneath the soot, utterly still. He wasn't just defeated, he looked broken. A medical bot zoomed towards him, its alarms a tiny, insignificant sound in the vast quiet. On the opposite side of the crater, Izuku stood frozen. His arm, raised from the invocation, trembled violently. The bandage on his other arm was soaked through with fresh blood, the hounder's claw marks weeping crimson. But it wasn't just his arm. Thin trickles of blood ran from his nostrils, his ears, and the corners of his eyes, stark red trails against his ashen skin. He stared blankly at the crater, at the unconscious Bakugo, at his own trembling, blood-streaked hand. The rage was gone, replaced by a hollow, echoing numbness and a bone-deep exhaustion that threatened to swallow him whole. He took one shaky step forward. Then his legs gave out. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut, crumpling face-first onto the scorched concrete just outside the crater's edge, utterly still. The silence held for one more heartbeat. Then the stadium erupted. Not in cheers, but in a cacophony of screams, shouts, gasps, and panicked questions. Heroes leaped from the stands. Teachers rushed onto the field. All Might was already halfway down the stairs, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. Recovery Girl was the first to reach Izuku, her tiny form kneeling beside his prone body. She checked his pulse, her expression grim. She gently turned his head, wiping away the blood from his nose and eyes with a cloth, revealing the terrifying extent of the damage. She looked up at the approaching Cementos and Aizawa, her voice carrying a chilling gravity through the stunned silence that had fallen over the immediate area. "That summon," she stated, her voice tight with professional concern laced with deep shock, drained everything. Not just his stamina. It burned through his life force like a fuse. "He's on the brink." High above, in the commentator's booth, Present Mike found his voice, but it was devoid of its usual exuberance, filled only with stunned awe and fear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't even know what we just witnessed. Midoriya Izuku. He summoned a god of lightning. And it nearly killed him." He swallowed hard. "The match. Bakugo Katsuki is unconscious. Midoriya Izuku is down. This is unprecedented." Aizawa stared down at the crater, at the broken form of Bakugo being loaded onto a stretcher, and at the small, bleeding boy being carefully lifted by Recovery Girl and Cementos. His capture weapon hung limp. His usual exhaustion was replaced by a chilling realization. The question wasn't about control anymore. It was about survival. Izuku's survival. And perhaps everyone else's. The bridge wasn't just to another world. It was to forces that could shatter this one. And the boy who held it open was paying the price in blood. ## Chapter 8, On the Brink. The sterile smell of antiseptic was a constant, unwelcome companion. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of the UA infirmary, painting clean lines on the polished floor, but it felt distant, irrelevant. Izuku lay propped up on pillows, the crisp white sheets pulled to his waist. His body felt hollowed out, like a discarded husk. Every muscle screamed with a deep, pervasive ache, and a dull throb pulsed behind his temples. But it was the inside that felt truly scoured. Empty. Drained. Recovery Girl's diagnosis echoed in the silence, burned through his life force like a fuse. On the brink. He remembered the terrifying numbness after Zapdos vanished, the taste of copper flooding his mouth, the world tilting violently before darkness swallowed him. He remembered waking briefly to blurred faces, All Might's stark horror, Aizawa's unnerving stillness, his mother's tear-streaked face. Now, days later, the physical toll was stark. Bandages wrapped his forearm where the hounder's claws had torn deeper than he'd realized during the adrenaline rush. Fainter bandages covered the scrapes on his palms and knees from his final collapse. But the internal cost was written in the pallor of his skin, the dark circles bruising the skin beneath his eyes, and the fine tremor in his hands whenever he tried to lift them. He gingerly touched the edge of the bandage on his forearm. The Hounder's pokeball, black and jagged, lay on the bedside table beside Fletchinder's flame-marked one. It radiated a low, sullen heat, a constant reminder of the feral rage he'd barely contained. And then there was Lucario's ball, its usual steely resonance muted, pulsing slowly like a weak heartbeat. The image of it blasted into the wall, smoke curling from its fur, was seared into his mind. A low whine escaped Izuku's throat, not of pain, but of profound guilt. I failed him. I pushed too hard. I lost control. The door clicked open softly. All Might entered, deflated and gaunt, his presence filling the room with a different kind of weight, concern etched into every line of his skeletal face. He carried a small stack of newspapers and a tablet. "Young Midoriya," he said, his voice a raspy whisper that still managed to convey immense relief. "Good to see you awake properly. How are you feeling?" Like a dried-up Magikarp, Izuku managed, his voice rough and weak. He tried a small smile, but it felt brittle. "Tired. Really tired. So, everywhere." All Might pulled a chair close to the bed. Recovery Girl's quirk accelerated the healing of the physical damage significantly. But the energy drain, that's a deeper matter. Rest is your best medicine now. Strict rest. He placed a gentle hand on Izuku's shoulder. "What you did? Summoning that." "It was reckless," Izuku finished, looking down at his trembling hands. "Stupid. I lost control. I saw Lucario. And Bakugu. And I just exploded. Like him." The shame burned hotter than any fever. "No," All Might said firmly, though his eyes held a deep unease. "It was born of a desire to protect, to fight back against overwhelming aggression. But the power you channeled, young Midoriya, the legendary Pokémon, it is beyond comprehension, beyond containment by a vessel not yet fully forged." He tapped his own chest. "One for all requires a body strong enough to hold it. The bridge you possess. It seems to require a spirit strong enough to withstand the currents of forces that dwarf even OFA." He sighed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "We must understand this. Before you attempt anything like that again. The cost." He gestured at Izuku's weakened state. "That is too high." He picked up the tablet and tapped the screen, turning it towards Izuku. The headlines screamed, "UA's Monster Summoner, Boy Who Called the Storm. Quirk or Curse. Midoriya Izuku's Near-Fatal Power. Sports Festival Shocker. Did you cheat with a second quirk? Analysis. The God of Lightning Reality or Mass Hysteria?" Below the headlines were chaotic images, the blinding flash as Zapdos manifested, the massive crater where Bakugu had stood, Izuku collapsing, blood associating his face. Comment sections were worse, a toxic stew of awe, fear, speculation, and outright vitriol. Conspiracy theories abounded. Secret government experiments, hidden villain heritage, a quirk mutation so unstable it should be suppressed. Some hailed him as a new kind of hero, others demanded his expulsion, calling him a walking catastrophe. Izuku flinched, looking away. "They think I'm a monster. Or a fraud. They don't understand," All Might said, lowering the tablet. "Fear of the unknown is a powerful force. The Commission is concerned. They are demanding a full review of your quirk registration and capabilities. Nizu is handling it, but expect scrutiny, young Midoriya. Intense scrutiny." The door opened again, revealing Principal Nizu, sipping calmly from a teacup perched on his paw. "Ah, good you're both here. And awake, Midoriya-kun. Excellent." He hopped onto a stool All Might pulled over. "The press conference is scheduled for this afternoon. A necessary evil, I'm afraid. We will present a united front. Emphasize the unique, still understood nature of your quirk, the unintentional nature of the Zapdos manifestation, and UA's commitment to your training and safety protocols. You will not be demonstrating anything, Midoriya-kun. You will answer only pre-approved questions, briefly and vaguely. Recovery girl insists on a wheelchair for your appearance, no arguments. We project fragility and control, not instability. Izuku swallowed hard. The thought of facing the flashing cameras, the shouted questions, felt like another kind of battlefield. Yes, sir. Good, Nizu chirped. Now, onto less public matters. The energy signature your Zapdos emitted. It was unlike anything in the Quirk registry. Off the scale. It has drawn attention beyond the media. His beady eyes held a glint of seriousness. Undesirable attention. The press conference was a trial by firelight. Flashes erupted like miniature explosions as Izuku, pale and visibly trembling, was wheeled onto the stage by a stern-looking Aizawa. All Might stood tall beside Nizu, projecting reassurance, but Izuku felt small and exposed under the barrage of shouted questions. Midoriya, is it true you possess a second hidden quirk? What was that creature? Can you control it? Are you a danger to your classmates? Did Yue know how dangerous your quirk was? Are the rumors about you bleeding from your eyes true? Nizu handled most with smooth, evasive diplomacy. Midoriya-kun possesses a unique and complex emitter-type quirk still under full assessment by Yue's faculty. The manifestation during the sports festival was an unforeseen reaction to extreme duress and is not representative of his typical capabilities or control. Yue prioritizes the safety of all students, and enhanced training and monitoring protocols are being implemented. Izuku managed a few shaky, pre-rehearsed lines when prompted. I never meant for that to happen. I just wanted to protect Lucario and win the match. My quirk. It reacted strongly. Too strongly. I'm learning to understand it better. His voice was thin, amplified by the microphone to sound even weaker. Aizawa's glare silenced the most aggressive reporters. The image they projected, the broken boy, the stern protector, the reassuring symbol of peace, the composed principal, was carefully calculated. It emphasized vulnerability and institutional control. The headlines the next morning were marginally less inflammatory. Yue vows control over summoner of student. Midoriya apologizes for uncontrolled power. Quirk experts baffled by lightning manifestation. The monster narrative was dampened, replaced by mystery and caution. But the damage was done. His secret was out, warped by fear and speculation. Deep beneath a rundown bar, the air thick with dust and the low hum of faulty wiring, Tamura Shigaraki scratched absently at his neck, staring at a grainy, paused image on a large monitor. It showed the moment Zapdos materialized above the UA Stadium, a being of pure, crackling wrath. Kurogyri polished a glass behind the bar, his yellow eyes reflecting the screen's glow. Spirits! Shigaraki murmured, his voice a dry rasp. Sensei said quirks were the evolution of humanity. But this is something older. Something wild. He paused the footage again, zooming in on Izuku's face contorted with rage and agony. He didn't control it. It used him. Like a lightning rod. A dry, humorless chuckle escaped him. Pathetic. But useful. He turned to Kurogyri. The reports about the energy signature? Unprecedented, young master, Kurogyri intoned smoothly. It dwarfed even high-yield nuclear detonations in its localized concentration. It registered on sensors designed to track cosmic events. The boy is a conduit. A keyhole. Shigaraki's fingers flexed. A keyhole to them. To the spirits he sees. The weak ones he keeps as pets. And the strong ones he barely touches. He looked back at the screen, at the fading image of the lightning god. Sensei seeks power to destroy this rotten society. But this is power from outside. Primordial. Untamed. A dangerous gleam entered his red eyes. Why destroy with our own hands when we can unleash gods? Why control petty thugs? He gestured dismissively, "But when you can control legends?" He scratched his neck harder, drawing a thin bead of blood. Find out everything about Deku. His patterns. His weaknesses. Where he finds these things. That bridge he uses. I want it. And next time. He pointed a decaying finger at the screen, at Izuku's collapsed form. That I won't just break his toys. I'll take his gods for myself. Weeks crawled by. Izuku was released from the infirmary but confined to light duties and intense physical therapy under Recovery Girl's strict supervision. Training was restricted to Quirkless conditioning and strategy sessions. The pokeball at his belt felt heavier than ever. He visited Lucario daily in the specialized recovery unit within the support department, a pressurized chamber infused with aura-conductive energy designed by Powerloader. The blue-furred warrior was healing, slowly, its consciousness a low ember within the ball. The guilt was a constant weight. He avoided the common areas. Whispers followed him. That's the lightning guy. He nearly killed Bakugu. Did you see the crater? Even well-meaning classmates like Uraraka and Ida seemed hesitant, their greetings tinged with a new caution. Only Todoroki remained impassive, his dual-colored gaze holding a flicker of something Izuku couldn't decipher, not fear, but intense calculation. Aizawa's rational deceptions, class became an exercise in frustration. While others practiced quirk application and refinement, Izuku was relegated to theoretical scenarios and observation. Until you demonstrate consistent control and a full understanding of your quirk's limits and the risks it poses to yourself and others, Midoriya, field application is suspended, Aizawa stated flatly after Izuku tentatively asked about summoning Ghastly for an intangibility drill. Your current priority is not mastering new tricks. It's rebuilding your foundation and proving you won't detonate a legendary Pokémon in the middle of a crowded street. The isolation chafed. He felt like he was back on that riverbank rock at 8 years old, unseen and misunderstood, but now the whole world was staring, waiting for him to crack or explode. The warmth Ho-Oh had left in his chest felt like a distant memory, buried under layers of exhaustion and anxiety. He trained his body relentlessly, pushing through the lingering fatigue, desperate to strengthen the vessel All Might spoke of. He pored over his notes on his captured Pokémon, analyzing their abilities, theorizing combinations. But it was all theory. Paper strategies felt useless without the living partners. One crisp afternoon, during a mandated light walk around campus grounds, Izuku found himself near the imposing structure of the UA barrier, the massive wall separating the school from the city. He leaned against the cool concrete, looking out at the sprawling urban landscape. Below, a complex network of highways wove around a large river spanned by the massive Mizudafu Bay Bridge. The city hummed with its usual energy, oblivious to the turmoil within the walls of the Hero Academy. Suddenly, a low rumble vibrated through the ground, distinct from the usual traffic noise. Then another. Then the sharp, unmistakable crack of breaking concrete, followed by panicked screams and the blaring of car horns. Izuku's head snapped up. Near the central support pillar of the Bay Bridge's on-ramp, dust and debris billowed into the air. A section of the elevated roadway had collapsed, trapping vehicles. But this wasn't an accident. Figures moved amidst the chaos, not rescue workers. Figures in dark, mismatched clothing, wielding crude weapons and quirks with malicious intent. One, a hulking man with skin like cracked stone, slammed his fists into another support column, sending shockwaves through the structure. Another, a woman with prehensile, whip-like hair, lashed out at fleeing civilians. Villains. Panic surged, cold and sharp. People were trapped. The bridge structure was unstable. Heroes would respond, but not instantly. I have to help. The thought was instinctive, heroic. But Aizawa's order echoed, suspended. Too risky. He looked down at his belt. Fletchinder could scout. Buniri could navigate debris. Bulbasaur could stabilize with vines. Ghastly could phase through rubble. Even the volatile Houndour. Its fire could maybe cut through wreckage? But summoning them, visibly, after the media frenzy, the scrutiny, and the drain, even on a small scale, with his body still recovering. Another explosion rocked the bridge base. A fuel tanker near the collapse caught fire, sending a plume of black smoke skyward. The screams intensified. The hesitation vanished, burned away by the sight of the fire, the screams, the image of people trapped like he'd seen the girl trapped during the sports festival. He wasn't All Might. He wasn't even fully in control. But he had tools. He had Pokémon who could help now. He was here. He ducked behind a large decorative boulder near the barrier wall, out of direct sight from the bridge but with a clear line to the unfolding disaster. He focused, pushing aside his own fear and fatigue, channeling the desperate need to help, to save. The golden hum resonated, weaker than before but present. Fletchinder. I need eyes. Scout the collapse. Find trapped civilians, structural weaknesses, villain positions. Avoid engagement. The flame-patterned ball flew from his hand. Fletchinder materialized high above in a streak of crimson light, instantly diving towards the smoke with a sharp cry, invisible to the chaos below but clear in Izuku's mind's eye. Buniri. Ghastly. Go. Buniri, focus on agility, get to places rescuers can't reach quickly, check vehicles, guide people out. Ghastly, intangibility, phase through wreckage, find survivors in pockets, use confuse ray or lick only if directly threatened by villains, prioritize search. The cream and purple ball flew. Buniri appeared near a pile of collapsed concrete slabs, instantly darting into a gap with incredible speed. Ghastly phased through a twisted beam, its gaseous form vanishing into the smoke-filled interior of a half-crushed bus. Izuku's breath came fast. Coordinating three at once was taxing, a mental juggling act. He felt the drain immediately, a familiar tug at his core, but manageable. He focused on the feedback, Fletchinder's aerial view revealing a cluster of people trapped under a collapsed section of guardrail, Ghastly finding a stunned child under a seat in the bus, Buniri leading a dazed woman away from a teetering slab. He relayed the positions mentally, hoping emergency frequencies would pick up his shouted descriptions to the approaching sirens. Then, Fletchinder shrieked a warning. Near the base of the central pillar, the stone-skinned villain had been joined by another, a lanky figure with arms that elongated into crackling energy whips. They were focusing their assault on the main support, ignoring the heroes now arriving at the periphery, trying to contain the fire and rescue those already visible. If that pillar went, the entire on-ramp section, maybe more, could come down. Bulbasaur. I need you. Vine Whip. Reinforce that central pillar. Anchor it to the stable ground. Slow their damage. The green ball arced out. Bulbasaur materialized amidst the chaos, near the base of the massive pillar under assault. It planted its feet, the bulb on its back glowing as thick vines shot forth, lashing around the cracked concrete like living steel cables, digging into the earth further back, bracing against the villain's blows. The stone-skinned villain roared in frustration as his next punch vibrated against the reinforced structure but failed to cause significant new damage. Could hold it, Bulbasaur. Izuku whispered, sweat beading on his forehead. The drain increased. He could feel Bulbasaur straining against the immense force. Suddenly, the energy whip villain lashed out, not at the pillar, but directly at Bulbasaur. The crackling energy whip snapped through the air. Bulbasaur, focused on bracing the pillar, couldn't dodge fast enough. Izuku's heart lurched. A blur of blue and black intercepted the blow. The energy whip connected, but not with Bulbasaur. Lucario stood, slightly hunched, its fur singed where the whip had struck its crossed forearms. It had materialized instinctively, summoned by Izuku's surge of protective panic. Its red eyes blazed, not with full strength, but with fierce determination. It let out a low growl, stepping protectively in front of Bulbasaur. Lucario! You shouldn't be. Izuku gasped, feeling the drain spike sharply. Lucario was still recovering. Summoning it was a massive risk. But the Pokémon ignored him, its focus entirely on the villains threatening its teammate and the crumbling structure. It launched a weak but precise aura sphere, forcing the energy whip villain back. The stone-skinned villain roared, turning his attention to Lucario. He charged, fist raised for a devastating blow. Lucario, still weakened, couldn't possibly block head-on. Bulbasaur cried out, trying to redirect a vine, but it was anchored to the pillar. Izuku acted without thought. He focused on the rage he felt at the villains hurting innocent people and threatening his partners, the desperate need to protect. He channeled it not towards the sky, but towards the earth, towards the untamed spirit he'd only just begun to touch. Houndour, I need fire. Target the ground beneath the stone villain. Make him lose footing. Now. The black pokeball shot from his hand. Houndour materialized in a flash of crimson light near the charging villain's feet. It was snarling, its crimson eyes wild, radiating pain and fury from its injured leg and its forced summoning. It saw the massive villain bearing down and the energy crackling nearby. Fear and aggression warred within it. Houndour, fire. Under his feet. Izuku commanded, pouring his will into the command, offering the target, the outlet. Houndour hesitated for a split second, its gaze flicking from the villain to Izuku, hidden near the barrier wall. It felt the command the bridge offered, the shared target of the threat. With a guttural snarl that mixed pain and defiance, it opened its maw and unleashed a torrent of dark, smoky fire, ember. Not at the villain directly, but at the cracked asphalt beneath his leading foot. The asphalt, already stressed by the villain's weight and the earlier attacks, softened and buckled instantly. The stone-skinned villain's foot plunged through the sudden hole, throwing him off balance mid-charge. His massive punch went wide, slamming harmlessly into the dirt beside the pillar as he stumbled and crashed to the ground with a bellow of surprise and rage. In that moment of distraction, pro-heroes finally breached the villain's line. Kamui Wood's lacquered branches wrapped around the downed stone villain. Death Arms grappled the energy whip user. The immediate threat to the pillar and Lucario was neutralized. Izuku sagged against the boulder, gasping for breath. The drain was immense. Summoning and commanding 4, then 5 Pokémon simultaneously, including the volatile Houndour and the weakened Lucario, had pushed him to his absolute limit. Black spots danced at the edge of his vision. He recalled them all in quick succession. Flander, Buniri, Ghastly, Bulbasaur, Houndour, and finally, Lucario, who gave him one last, steady look before dissolving into red light. The black pokeball of Houndour felt scorching hot, pulsing erratically. Sirens wailed. Heroes swarmed the bridge, taking over rescue operations. Izuku remained hidden, trembling, his clothes soaked with sweat unrelated to the autumn chill. He watched as trapped people were pulled free, as the fire was contained, as the villains were subdued. He had helped. He hadn't summoned a god. He hadn't lost control. He'd used his team, strategically, to save lives and buy time for the heroes. But the cost was etched into his shaking limbs and the hollow ache in his chest. And Lucario. Summoning it had been a desperate gamble. As he pushed himself away from the boulder, intending to slip back onto campus before being seen, a presence made him freeze. Lucario's pokeball, resting in his palm, pulsed. Not with the weak thrum of injury, but with a warm, steady, resonant beat. Stronger than before. Clear. An image flashed in his mind, not his own, the energy whip lashing towards Bulbasaur, his own surge of protective panic, Lucario's instinctive leap to intercept the blow. He felt Lucario's resolve in that moment, not just duty, but a fierce, unwavering loyalty. A choice. The pulse in the ball deepened, resonating with Izuku's own exhausted heartbeat. It wasn't just healing. It was a bond forged in shared danger and sacrifice, solidified by Izuku's desperate, selfless need to protect his partner, even against orders, even at great personal cost. Izuku clutched the pokeball tightly, the warmth spreading up his arm, combating the chill of exhaustion. He hadn't just caught Lucario. Amidst the smoke and chaos of the crumbling bridge, facing down villains with his own body still on the brink, he had finally earned its trust. The bridge hadn't shattered. It had barely, but it held. And on the other side, a warrior stood ready. ## Chapter 9, Legendary Cost. The sterile scent of antiseptic had become a reluctant familiarity. Weeks after the bridge incident, Izuku still moved with a lingering stiffness, a constant reminder of the brutal drain summoning Lucario had inflicted. Recovery Girl's tuts echoed in his memory, pushing too hard, young man. That bond is strong, but your vessel is still cracked. Aizawa's watchful gaze felt heavier than ever, a silent promise of expulsion if he stepped out of line again. The pokeball at his belt, Lucario's now resonating with a steady, warm pulse of recovered strength and deepened loyalty, were both his anchors and his potential liabilities. Today's training exercise was supposed to be controlled. A simulated chemical spill in UA's disaster zone, a sprawling complex mimicking industrial facilities. Team assignments: Izuku, Uraraka, Ida, and Tsuyu. Their objective: locate and secure mock victims, mannequins emitting distress signals, while navigating hazardous terrain marked by slippery chemical slicks, venting steam pipes, and unstable walkways. Standard rescue protocol. Emphasis on teamwork, Quirk application for mobility and containment, not combat. All right, team. Ida chopped his hand, his glasses glinting under the harsh industrial lights illuminating the fake refinery. Efficiency and precision are paramount. Uraraka-san, you handle vertical reconnaissance and lightning-heavy debris. Azui-san, your amphibious capabilities and adhesive properties are ideal for navigating slick surfaces and retrieving victims from hazardous liquids. Midoriya-san, he paused, his gaze flicking to Izuku's belt. Your summons offer unique utility. Fletchinder for aerial scouting of the upper gantries, Buniri for agility in tight spaces or triggering safe paths through unstable zones. Coordination is key. We move in synchronized units. Got it, Ida-kun? Uraraka chirped, bouncing slightly on her toes. Leave the high stuff to me. Ribbit. Understood. Tsuyu added, her large eyes scanning the maze of pipes and catwalks. Izuku nodded, forcing a determined smile. Fletchinder can cover the upper levels quickly. Buniri's good for scouting ahead on the ground paths. He kept his plan simple, visible, within Aizawa's imposed limits. No ghastly intangibility, no Hounder's volatile fire, certainly no Lucario's combat prowess. He touched Lucario's ball, feeling its reassuring thrum. Not today, partner. Just support. High above, perched on a rusted-looking, but structurally sound, cooling tower, Aizawa watched through binoculars, capture weapon loose but ready. Vlad King stood beside him, monitoring comms. Keep a close eye on Midoriya, Vlad rumbled. That bridge incident showed control, but the boy's a lightning rod for trouble. Aizawa grunted, his gaze fixed on Izuku's green hair amidst the metallic gray landscape. Trouble finds those who attract forces beyond their understanding. Let's hope today is just chemicals and mannequins. The operation began smoothly. Ida's engine-powered speed mapped the perimeter. Uraraka, light as a feather, soared above, calling out victim locations. 2 mock casualties on Gantry 3. 1 trapped under a collapsed pipe junction on sub-level 2. Tsuyu navigated chemical spills with effortless leaps and sticky grips, retrieving dummies efficiently. Izuku played his part. Fletchinder darted through the upper structures, its sharp eyes spotting a dummy wedged behind a vent fan, relaying the position. Buniri, summoned briefly, scampered ahead down a narrow access tunnel lined with steaming pipes, confirming the path was clear of immediate hazards before Izuku and Ida followed. It felt good. Useful. Cooperative. The drain from commanding 2 Pokémon simultaneously was present, a low hum in his bones, but manageable. He focused on the rhythm of the rescue, the satisfaction of working seamlessly with his friends. They converged on the sub-level 2 location Tsuyu had identified, a simulated pump room filled with swirling, non-toxic green fog, representing toxic gas, and the sound of groaning metal. A heavy section of pipe had collapsed diagonally across the room, pinning a mannequin beneath it. The pipe hissed, venting steam erratically. Uraraka-san, lighten the pipe end. Ida commanded. Azui-san, prepare to extract the victim once it's lifted. Midoriya-san, Buniri, watch for secondary collapses or shifting debris. Uraraka touched the end of the pipe, not pinning the dummy. Release. The pipe section floated upwards, groaning. Tsuyu darted forward, her tongue lashing out to gently pull the mannequin free just as Uraraka's quirk reached its limit and the pipe settled back with a heavy clang. Victim secured. Tsuyu reported. Excellent coordination. Ida praised. Now to the exit. The simulated toxin levels are rising on the sensors. They turned towards the access tunnel. That's when the lights died. Not just dimmed, completely extinguished, plunging the pump room into near total darkness, broken only by the eerie glow of the swirling green fog and the intermittent sparks from the damaged pipe. What the? Power failure? Uraraka gasped, her voice tight with sudden fear. Unlikely. Ida snapped, instantly shifting into crisis mode. This facility has multiple redundancies. This is deliberate. A dry, rasping chuckle echoed through the fog, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. It scraped against Izuku's nerves, instantly recognizable and chilling. Deliberate? Oh, you could say that for eyes. Figures materialized from the swirling green, stepping out of the shadows cast by the emergency pipe sparks. Tamura Shigaraki, scratching furiously at his neck, his red eyes gleaming with manic interest. Behind him, Kurogiri's yellow eyes glowed within his misty form, and the hulking figure of Muscular cracked his knuckles, a sadistic grin splitting his face. Dabi leaned against a wall, blue flames flickering lazily around his fingertips, illuminating his scarred features with an unholy light. Shigaraki! Izuku breathed, his blood running cold. Instinctively, he stepped back, placing himself slightly in front of Uraraka and Tsuyu. Ida revved his engines, ready to charge. Fletchinder shrieked a warning from somewhere above in the darkness. Surprise inspection, Deku, Shigaraki crooned, tilting his head. Heard you've been playing with spirits. Showing off your little pets. His gaze raked over Izuku, lingering on his pokeball belt. Cute. But we're here to see the real show. The gods you keep locked away. Muscular cracked his neck. Yeah, bring out the big one. The storm bird. Or the rainbow chicken. Let's see what they can do against real muscle. He took a thundering step forward, making the floor vibrate. Midoriya, fall back. Ida yelled, shooting forward in a blur, aiming a piston kick at Muscular's knee. Muscular merely laughed, catching Ida's leg with one massive hand and slamming him into a wall with bone-jarring force. Ida crumpled, groaning. Tenya! Uraraka cried. She lunged, trying to touch Muscular, but Dabi flicked a wrist. A wall of blue fire erupted between her and the villain, forcing her back with a yelp of pain from the intense heat. Tsuyu's tongue shot out, aiming to wrap around Shigaraki's arm. Kurogiri's mist swirled, a dark portal opening just in time to swallow her tongue before it connected. Tsuyu gasped, reeling back as her tongue snapped back empty. Now, Shigaraki sked, stepping closer through the fog, ignoring the downed Ida and the trapped girls. His focus was solely on Izuku. No distractions. Just you and me, bridge boy. Show me what you've got. Summon something worthy. He raised a hand, all 5 fingers extended, aiming not at Izuku, but at the still groaning Ida nearby. Or I decay your friend piece by piece while you watch. Panic, cold and sharp, sliced through Izuku. He couldn't fight them all. Muscular's raw power, Dabi's searing flames, Kurogiri's portals, Shigaraki's decay, and his friends were already hurt or trapped. Summoning Fletchinder or Buniri was useless against this. Lucario could fight, but against all of them? And Shigaraki wanted a legendary. Tossed the drain. Recovery Girl's warnings screamed in his mind. On the brink. But Shigaraki's fingers hovered inches from Ida's leg. Uraraka was pinned by Dabi's flames. Tsuyu was recovering, vulnerable. He had no choice. He had to buy time. He had to protect them. His hand closed around a pokeball on his belt. Not Lucario's. Not Fletchinder's. His fingers brushed the cool, smooth surface of Tagetic's ball. The serene grace Pokémon. Its power was subtle, luck manipulation, gentle healing, protective barriers. Not offensive. But maybe it could shield them, create an opening? He threw it. Tagetic. Safeguard. Protect Ida and the others. Tagetic materialized in a soft glow of pink light, its wings fluttering gently. It chirped, a sound like chiming bells, and a shimmering, pale pink barrier of light instantly enveloped Ida, Uraraka, and Tsuyu just as Dabi sent another wave of fire towards Uraraka. The blue flames splashed harmlessly against the barrier. Shigaraki scowled. A shield? How boring. He pressed his palm flat against the safeguard barrier. Nothing happened. Decay couldn't touch the pure, protective energy. Annoying. Muscular roared in frustration and slammed his fist against the barrier. It rippled but held, though Tagetic flinched visibly with each impact, its glow dimming slightly. The strain of holding the barrier against Muscular's relentless assault was immense, flowing back through the connection to Izuku, adding to the building pressure in his chest. Pathetic, Dabi drawled, his blue eyes cold. He turned his flames on the surrounding environment instead. Pipes glowed red-hot, then white, before melting and bursting, spraying superheated steam and molten metal. The green fog thickened as chemicals simulated to be volatile began to ignite, where Dabi's flames touched containment markers. Small fires erupted across the pump room, spreading rapidly, fueled by leaking hydraulic fluid and insulation. The air filled with acrid smoke and the roar of flames. The disaster zone simulation had become horrifyingly real. The heat was intense, the smoke choking. The safeguard barrier protected his friends from direct attacks, but not from the rapidly escalating environmental disaster. They were trapped in a burning, collapsing death trap. "See what you made me do, Deku?" Shigaraki shouted over the roar of the fire, scratching his neck raw. "Your little shield won't save them from this. They'll burn, suffocate, crush, unless you show me something real. Bring out the storm. Bring out the beast of the sea. Summon it." Izuku coughed, eyes stinging from the smoke. He saw Uraraka trying to use her quirk on falling debris to shield Tsuyu within the barrier, her face pale with terror. He saw Ida struggling to rise, one arm clearly injured. He saw Tagetic's glow flickering under the combined assault of Muscular, the heat, and Dabi's deliberate sabotage. The fires raged, the heat becoming unbearable, the toxic green fog mixing lethally with the black smoke. Nurture. Hoa's silent command, a distant memory of warmth, warred with the suffocating heat and Shigaraki's demand. He needed to stop the fire. He needed to cleanse this. Not destroy, but purify. The image of a sleek, blue beast running across pure water, its very presence calming storms and purifying poison, surfaced in his mind. Suicune. The Aurora Pokémon. Guardian of the North Wind. Purifier of fouled waters. It wasn't wrath like Zapdos. It was serenity. It was cleansing. But the cost, summoning Zapdos had nearly killed him. Could he even survive summoning another legendary? A support beam, weakened by Dabi's flames, groaned overhead and crashed down towards the safeguard barrier shielding his friends. Tagetic cried out, pouring every ounce of its power into the shield. The beam slammed down, cracking the pink light. The barrier held, barely, but fractures spiderwebbed across its surface. Tagetic plummeted to the ground, its glow extinguished, vanishing back into its ball. The barrier flickered and died. Uraraka screamed as flaming debris rained down towards them. Izuku didn't think. He reached. Not just with his quirk, but with his soul. He reached for the ember of one for all, burning deep within his core, the sacred torch passed down to light humanity's way. He reached for the bridge within him, the connection to the world of spirits and guardians. And he poured everything into it, his desperate need to save his friends, his terror at the flames, his fierce determination to cleanse this corruption, to protect the innocent caught in Shigaraki's game. He channeled it all, fusing the power of the hero's legacy with the ancient call of the pure water spirit. Suicune. The name wasn't shouted, it was a resonating command, echoing with the combined power of one for all and the bridge, amplified by desperation. It vibrated in the air, momentarily silencing the roar of the fire. The world didn't explode in light. It flowed. A wave of pure, crystalline blue energy erupted from Izuku, washing outwards in a silent, expanding ring. It passed through the flames, not extinguishing them, but transforming them. The raging inferno flickered, its orange and blue fury cooling into shimmering, harmless auroras of light, blues, purples, greens, that danced like ethereal fireflies before winking out. The superheated metal cooled instantly, losing its glow. The toxic green fog dissolved, not dissipated, but purified into clear, clean-smelling vapor. The acrid smoke vanished, replaced by the crisp scent of mountain air after a storm. The groaning, collapsing structure seemed to sigh, the stressed metal groans quieting as if soothed. And in the center of this wave of purification, standing calmly on the now-cooled floor amidst the dancing auroras of vanquished flame, was Suicune. Its form was majestic, sleek, and impossibly graceful. Its hide was a deep, crystalline blue, like pure glacier ice, adorned with flowing, ribbon-like appendages that shimmered with inner light. Its eyes, large and intelligent, glowed with a serene, ancient power. A crest like a crown of diamond frost adorned its head, and its very presence radiated an aura of profound calm and purity. It lowered its head slightly, a faint mist curling from its nostrils. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The fire was gone. The toxins were cleansed. The immediate danger of collapse seemed postponed, as if the structure itself had been momentarily reinforced by the wave of pure energy. Even Muscular paused in his assault, blinking in dumbfounded confusion at the sudden cessation of heat and violence. Dabi's flames guttered and died in his hands, his usual apathy replaced by stark disbelief. Kurogiri's mist swirled agitatedly. Shigaraki stopped scratching. His red eyes widened, not with fear, but with pure, unadulterated hunger. He stared at Suicune, then at Izuku, a slow, terrifying smile spreading across his face. Beautiful. Shigaraki breathed, his voice filled with awe. So, this is a real spirit. A god. Izuku stood rigid, one arm outstretched from the summoning. The drain was immediate and catastrophic, far worse than Zapdos. It wasn't a blow, it was a siphoning. He felt his life force, his stamina, his very heat being pulled out through his bones, channeled into maintaining the connection to the legendary beast. His vision tunneled instantly, graying at the edges. Blood, hot and thick, began to trickle from his nose. A coppery taste flooded his mouth. His legs trembled violently. Suicune turned its majestic head, its glowing eyes meeting Izuku's. There was no judgment, only a deep, ancient understanding. It knew the cost. It knew the vessel was breaking. It gave a soft, echoing cry, like the chime of frozen waterfalls. Then it moved. It didn't attack. It flowed. It ran, not towards the villains, but through the ravaged pump room, its crystalline hooves barely touching the scorched floor. Where it passed, the last remnants of damage seemed to lessen. Scorch marks faded slightly. Warped metal groaned less ominously. The auroras of vanquished flames swirled around it like a benevolent halo. Its path took it past the stunned villains, a wave of pure, calming energy washing over them, momentarily stifling aggression, replacing it with an unsettling sense of peace. Muscular lowered his fists, a confused frown on his face. Dabi stared at his extinguished palms. Even Shigaraki's manic scratching slowed, his gaze fixed on the retreating form of the majestic beast with an almost reverent intensity. Suicune reached the far wall, damaged by fire and impacts. It lowered its head again, breathing out a stream of shimmering, diamond dust mist. The mist washed over the cracked concrete and twisted metal, sealing fissures, reinforcing weakened structures. It was actively healing the environment, mitigating the disaster Shigaraki had caused. Then, with one last, lingering look back at Izuku, its form dissolved. Not in a flash of light, but like mist evaporating under the morning sun, leaving behind only the lingering scent of clean water and the faint echo of its chime. The moment Suicune vanished, the full force of the backlash hit Izuku like a physical blow. He gasped, a wet, ragged sound. Blood poured freely from his nose, now joined by thin trickles from his ears and the corners of his eyes. The gray tunnel of his vision collapsed into utter blackness. His legs gave way completely. He crumpled like a puppet with its strings severed, hitting the cool, cleansed floor with a sickening thud. He didn't lose consciousness immediately. He lay there, convulsing weakly, drowning in the sensation of being utterly, terrifyingly empty, his body a broken vessel leaking life onto the purified concrete. He could distantly hear Uraraka's scream, Tsuyu's croak of alarm, Ida's pained shout. Shigaraki stepped over him, his red eyes gleaming with unholy fascination as he looked down at Izuku's broken, bleeding form. He crouched, not to touch, but to observe, like a scientist examining a rare, broken specimen. "Look at the cost," he murmured, almost to himself. "Look at the price of touching divinity." He reached out a hand, fingers twitching, not towards Izuku, but towards the space where Suakun had been. Such power, wasted on a vessel that cracks so easily. He straightened up, his gaze sweeping over his momentarily pacified lieutenants and the recovering heroes. This was educational. We've seen the beast of purification. We've seen the bridge crack under its weight. He looked back down at Izuku, a chilling promise in his eyes. "Rest, little bridge. Rebuild your strength. Tend your cracks." He started scratching his neck again, the sound harsh in the sudden silence. "Because next time." A dry, rasping chuckle escaped him as Kurogyri's mist began to swirl around them. "That I won't just watch. Next time, I'll catch your gods myself." The swirling darkness consumed Shigaraki, Dabi, Muscular, and Kurogyri, leaving behind only the cleansed but damaged pump room, the smell of ozone and purified air, the groans of injured students, and the horrifyingly still, blood-streaked form of Izuku Midoriya on the floor. The legend had walked among them, leaving only devastation in its wake, etched not in fire, but in the broken body of the boy who dared to summon it. Chapter 10, you see them too? The sterile white ceiling of the UA infirmary was Izuku's world. Days bled into a haze of muffled sounds, the rhythmic beep of monitors, recovery girls' muttered assessments, the distant chime of the campus bell. Pain was a constant companion, a deep, grinding ache in his bones that pulsed in time with the phantom echoes of Suakun's power. It felt like his insides had been scraped raw and left hollow. Bandages covered the worst of the external damage, cracked ribs, severe muscle tears, and the reopened claw marks from the Houndar, but the internal cost, the life force drain, was a chilling emptiness no bandage could mend. He drifted in and out of consciousness, fragmented memories surfacing, Uraraka's tear-streaked face leaning over him in the ruined pump room, Ida's strained voice shouting for medics, Tsuyu's cool hand on his forehead. Aizawa's silhouette, dark and unreadable, standing sentinel at the door. All Might's skeletal frame radiating a helpless, profound worry. And Shigaraki's parting words, echoing in the void, "Next time, I'll catch your gods myself." Each time he surfaced, the crushing weight of failure pressed down. He'd summoned Suakun, cleansed the fire, saved his friends from immediate immolation, but he'd also shattered himself doing it. He'd shown Shigaraki the legendary power he craved. He'd proven himself, once again, a liability barely contained by his own body. The whispers outside his door, hushed voices of teachers, the commission investigators spoke of unstable power, extreme risk, and necessary restrictions. The path he'd fought so hard for, the dream of being a hero with his Pokémon, seemed to be crumbling beneath him, faster than the burning pump room floor. One afternoon, the haze lifted slightly more than usual. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm on his face. He turned his head slowly, wincing at the protest in his neck muscles. Sitting beside his bed, not in her hero costume but in casual clothes, was Uraraka Achiko. She was reading a textbook, but her gaze kept flickering to his face, filled with a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. "Midoriya," she whispered, her voice soft as she noticed he was awake. "You're back." He tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. He managed a weak nod. Uraraka set the book aside, leaning forward. "Don't try to talk. Recovery girl says you need quiet." She hesitated, then reached out, gently placing her hand over his bandaged one resting on the sheet. "We were so scared. When you collapsed, all that blood," her voice hitched. "But you saved us. You saved everyone in that room. Suakun, it was beautiful. Terrifying but beautiful. It washed everything bad away." Her grip tightened slightly. "You stopped the fire. You stopped them." Izuku looked at her hand, then into her earnest brown eyes. The guilt warred with a fragile warmth. She saw it. She saw Suakun's power, its beauty, not just the destruction it cost him. "Shigaraki saw it too," he rasped, the words scraping out. Uraraka's expression hardened. "He saw it. And he ran. Because he couldn't catch it. Not then. Because you're the bridge, Deku. Only you. She used the old nickname, but it held none of Bakugo's venom, only fierce conviction. You used to be invisible. Remember? When it was just you and the Magikarp and no one else could see. Now, the whole world sees you. They see what you can do. They see the light and the cost. They see the Pokémon. They see you. Her words struck a chord deeper than she knew. He had been invisible. Quirkless Deku, seeing ghosts. Now, he was Midoriya Izuku, the boy who summoned legends and bled from his eyes doing it. For better and worse. But Uraraka saw him, the boy behind the power, the one who tried to save people, even at the brink. Thanks. Uraraka, he managed. She smiled, a genuine, warm expression that chased some of the chill from the room. Just get better, okay? The class, we're all waiting. Even Bakugo's been weirdly quiet. I think getting vaporized by Zapdos knocked some sense into him, or just scared him silent. She winked, a brief flash of her usual levity. We believe in you. And your team. Over the next few days, others visited. Ida, his arm in a sling, delivered a formal but heartfelt report on the successful rescue of all mock victims despite the villain incursion, praising Izuku's crucial intervention. Tsu croaked a quiet, "Thank you, Ribbit," her large eyes conveying more than words. Even Kaminari and Kirishima popped in, their usual boisterousness tempered into respectful awe, asking hesitant questions about Fletchinder and Buniri. Todoroki stood silently for a long moment, his heterochromatic eyes fixed on Izuku with intense scrutiny, finally offering a single, curt nod that felt like profound acknowledgement. The invisible wall he'd felt since the sports festival, the wall of fear and misunderstanding, was crumbling. They weren't just accepting his power, they were accepting him, bridge and all, cracks and all. They saw the partners he fought alongside. They saw the heart that drove him to the brink. Finally, the day came when Recovery Girl declared him stable enough for a proper conversation. The visitor wasn't unexpected, but the gravity in the air was palpable. All Might entered, looking even more gaunt than usual, the strain of recent events etched into his face. He pulled up a chair, the silence stretching for a moment before he spoke, his voice low and serious. Young Midoriya, seeing you like this, it cuts deeper than any villain ever could. He looked down at his own bony hands. I passed on one for all believing it was the ultimate torch to light the way. But your power, this bridge you possess, it connects to something far older, far more fundamental than even OFA's legacy. Izuku listened, his heart pounding weakly against his ribs. OFA is a sacred flame, passed hand to hand through generations of heroes, All Might continued. But your bridge, it taps into the very source of that light. The primal forces of life, nature, guardianship, the forces that created the potential for quirks, perhaps. Ho-Oh, the phoenix of rebirth. Suicune, the purifier. They are not quirks. They are manifestations of the world's soul. He met Izuku's gaze, his blue eyes blazing with a mix of awe and profound responsibility. One for all might not just be power for you to wield, young Midoriya. It might be the key that stabilizes your bridge. It might allow you to commune with these legends not as a conduit forced open by desperation, but as a guardian, a partner. The revelation hung in the air. OFA wasn't just strength, it was a keystone. A way to strengthen the bridge itself, to bear the currents without shattering. It wasn't about becoming stronger despite his quirk, but about unifying them. Shigaraki, Izuku whispered, the name tasting like ash. He wants it. He wants the bridge. All Might's expression darkened. He sees only power. Primordial power to destroy. He doesn't understand the balance, the responsibility, the life that flows through it. He sees gods as weapons. But they are guardians. And your bridge is the only true connection. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to an intense whisper. That's why you must heal. You must train not just your body for OFA, but your spirit for the bridge. To understand the Pokémon you have, not just command them. To listen to the currents. To become a guardian worthy of the legends that recognize you. Shigaraki will try to force the connection. You must be ready to hold it. The responsibility felt heavier than any debris he'd lifted. But it also felt a purpose deeper than just being a hero. A calling intertwined with the ancient beings who had touched his life. He thought of Lucario's unwavering loyalty, earned in fire and sacrifice. Of Buniri's quiet comfort. Of Magikarp's first, impossible nuzzle. They weren't tools. They were partners. Friends. Pieces of that ancient world trusting him. I will, Izuku said, his voice stronger than it had been in days, filled with a quiet, resolute determination. I'll get stronger. For the bridge. For them. He looked down at his hands, no longer trembling. I'll become the first hero who saves people with both heart and Pokémon. A real guardian. All Might smiled, a genuine, proud smile that crinkled the corners of his weary eyes. He placed a large, skeletal hand gently on Izuku's head. I know you will, my boy. I believe in you. Now rest. Your journey is just beginning. The next morning, Izuku was discharged. The walk back to the Heights Alliance dormitory was slow, supported by Uraraka and Ida, flanked by Tsuyu and a watchful Aizawa. The class gathered in the common room, a wave of relieved smiles and quiet welcomes washing over him. Even Bakugu, lurking near the back, merely glared with a simmering intensity that lacked its usual destructive edge, his gaze occasionally flicking to Izuku's bandaged arm with something unreadable. The normalcy of it, Mineta complaining about homework, Kaminari trying to impress Jairu with a terrible pun, Sato offering cookies, was a bomb. He wasn't a spectacle here. He was Deku. Class 1 as summoner. The friend. Later, alone in his quiet dorm room, the exhaustion returned, but it was a clean tiredness. He sat at his desk, the notebook titled The Bridge open before him. He sketched Suikun's serene form, the cleansing wave, the auroras of vanquished flame. He wrote notes on the feeling, the immense drain, yes, but also the profound sense of rightness in the purification, the connection deeper than command. He jotted down All Might's words, Keystone. Guardian. Listen. He felt the familiar presences around him, stronger now, clearer. Fletchinder's fiery restlessness from its perch on his bookshelf. Buniri's soft snores from under the bed. Bulbasaur's calm rootedness near the window. Togetic's gentle hum near the ceiling. Ghastly's cool, playful drift in a shadowed corner. Lucario's steady, recovered pulse from its ball on the desk. And the Hounder's sullen heat, banked but present, a challenge yet to be fully met. They were his foundation. His first connection to the world beyond the bridge. He looked out the window at the twilight settling over the UA campus. Hard one, fragile but real. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, reaching inward not with force, but with quiet attention. He felt the ember of one for all warm and steady. He felt the bridge, not as a strained conduit, but as a pathway, humming with potential. He sent a pulse of gratitude, of resolve, down that pathway. I'm learning. I'll protect it. A soft, almost imperceptible tap sounded against the window pane. Izuku opened his eyes. Caught in the fading amber light of the setting sun, stuck delicately to the outside of the glass, was a single, impossibly vibrant feather. Longer than his hand, it shimmered with an internal radiance, brilliant crimson fading into molten gold, edged with the purest emerald green. It pulsed with a gentle, ancient warmth that resonated deep within his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt since the beach, since Ho. It was a feather of pure hope. A smile, genuine and warm, touched Izuku's lips. He reached out not to open the window, but to place his fingertips gently against the glass, mirroring the feather on the other side. It was real. A reminder. A promise. The bridge holds. Outside, in the deepening twilight, unseen by Izuku, a figure stood cloaked in unnatural shadow at the edge of the UA woods. Tamura Shigaraki lowered the high-powered spectral lens he'd been using, his eyes wide not with anger, but with a terrifying, covetous wonder. The lens had shown him not just the boy, but the impossible concentration of life energy swirling around him, distinct, vibrant auras representing the Pokémon, the warm pulse of OFA, and the shimmering, multifaceted pathway of the bridge itself. And he had seen the feather materialize, its divine energy a blinding signature on his stolen, experimental sensor. He wasn't scratching his neck. His hands were clenched into fists, trembling with a new kind of hunger. He could see it now. Not just the gods, but the pathways. The connections. The bridge wasn't an abstract concept. It was a luminous, intricate web visible only through stolen technology and the unique decay energy signature he'd learned to manipulate. He saw the threads connecting Izuku to each Pokémon, saw the thicker cord pulsing with OFA's power, saw the vast, shimmering gateway that was the bridge itself, leading into the impossible beyond. He's not just a keyhole, Shigaraki breathed, his voice a dry rasp of awe. He's the gatekeeper. And the gate, a slow, chilling smile spread across his face, illuminated by the faint, sickly green glow emanating from a device grafted onto his wrist, a device humming with captured energy signatures, including the fading resonance of Suikun's purification and the violent echo of Zapdos's wrath. The gate has locks. And locks, he raised his other hand, fingers twitching. Energy, tinged with a sickly green reminiscent of the decay but also crackling with unstable spectral feedback, coalesced around his fingertips. It wasn't pure decay anymore. It was something new. Something mimicking. Can be picked. He focused the unstable energy not on the window, but on the space around the feather's aura, visible only through his lens. He didn't try to decay it. He tried to resonate, to vibrate at the same frequency as the bridge's energy. To slip a phantom finger through the cracks in Izuku's exhausted defenses. Inside the room, Izuku's smile faltered. A sudden, sharp wrongness pierced his calm. It wasn't pain. It was a discordant shiver down the bridge, a cold, greasy sensation slithering against the warm connection to his Pokémon. Lucario's ball on the desk pulsed a sharp, warning blue. Ghastly hissed, its form solidifying slightly. The Hounder's ball flared with agitated heat. Izuku jerked his hand back from the glass, his heart lurching. He scanned his room, then looked back out the window. He saw nothing but the gathering darkness and the glowing feather. But the feeling, the invasive, probing wrongness, lingered for a chilling second before vanishing as abruptly as it came. Had he imagined it? The drain, the exhaustion. Outside, Shigaraki lowered his hand, the unstable energy dissipating. The grafted device on his wrist flickered erratically, a warning whine barely audible. It hadn't worked. Not yet. The resonance was too crude, the bridge's natural defenses, even weary, too strong. But he had touched it, felt its structure, seen its frequency. Not yet, gatekeeper, Shigaraki whispered, his red eyes fixed on Izuku's silhouette in the window. The covetous wonder hardened into icy determination. He took a step back, melting deeper into the shadows. But soon, I've seen the locks. I've felt the wards. Rebuild your strength. Tend your cracks. His smile returned, colder now. Make the bridge strong. Because when I return, he flexed his fingers, the ghostly green energy flickering again, hungry and persistent. I won't just knock. I'll learn the combination. And your gods will have a new gatekeeper. He vanished into the gloom, leaving only the faintest echo of unstable energy and a profound, chilling silence. On the windowsill, the golden feather of Ho-Oh glowed with unwavering warmth, a beacon of hope against the newly revealed darkness that had just learned how to see the bridge it coveted. The peace held, but it was a peace under siege, guarded by a weary boy and his partners, with the storm clouds of a far more insidious threat gathering just beyond the light.